Chapter 1332, Facing Against the Hall Master. 3. The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall produced a grunt. His body violently shook as a stream of blue blood rolled from the corner of his lips. Blue was the color of his blood. The powerful sword chi wreaked havoc within the Hall Master's body. Not only did it destroy his organs, blood, and flesh, it even caused the vitality of his body to quickly leak away. Although he possessed an extremely powerful body, that toughness was only a part of the exterior of his body. His interior was still very fragile. His organs were as fragile as paper before the sword chi that was no weaker than an emperor's power. The Hall Master angrily roared at the sky. His roar seemed a little like a serpent dragon's roar, making tremors form within several 100,000 kilometers. A supreme energy erupted from his body. He was using all the power within him to suppress the sword chi in his body. His left hand turned into a claw that swung at Jian Chen's head. At the same time, he controlled space to restrict Jian Chen's movements in an attempt to wipe out Jian Chen's soul in a single stroke. Although he had taken Jian Chen's heart in the clash, Jian Chen had managed to heavily injure him as well. The loss of a heart was nothing too severe to a Saint King. Another one would grow if they spent some time recovering and ingested some heavenly resources. However, Jian Chen had deposited a strand of sword chi within him, forcing him to use everything he had to suppress it. As a result, the Hall Master was even more heavily injured from his carelessness, making him extremely furious. A layer of dazzling light permeated Jian Chen's surroundings, making him seem like he was enveloped by the light. He seemed like a miniature sun. The protective light was something that Jian Chen had discovered on the way back from the Zhuanghuang microcosm. The light turned his body into something similar to a hedgehog. Not only was he covered with spikes that would injure his opponent as soon as they came in contact with him, but the light also possessed defensive abilities as well. Jian Chen no longer feared a Saint Emperor's ability to freeze space with the light's protection. Just when the space was frozen a second time, it was shattered by the light around Jian Chen. Afterward, he threw out a punch as hard as he could. It was tough and domineering and collided with the Hall Master's claw with a seemingly unstoppable force. Boom! The fist and claw collided and produced a deafening sound. A violent storm of energy brewed in the surroundings, causing the space there to violently tremble. The energy possessed some scattered chaotic force and sword chi. Both the Hall Master and Jian Chen were thrown back. The Hall Master regained his footing several 100 meters away. The blue light around him grew brighter and brighter. He was currently taking advantage of this moment to wipe out the sword chi within him. Jian Chen, on the other hand, only managed to stabilize himself after being thrown back several 1,000 meters. The light around him had become rather dull, but it soon returned to how it was before. His left hand had become a bloody mess. He was clearly at a disadvantage during the earlier clash with the Hall Master. The blood on Jian Chen's hand quickly vanished and returned to his body through his wounds. Even his injuries began to close up at a visible rate. Even his chest, which had been punctured by the Hall Master, was the same. The chaotic force displayed its terrifying regenerative abilities. It could be used in crucial moments of battle. Suddenly, the energy in the surroundings began to gather from all directions, condensing in the Hall Master's surroundings. The Hall Master had already cleansed the sword chi within him and now his hands were currently dancing around him. He was gathering the energy in the surroundings to use an absolutely secret technique. The commotion was just shocking. Jian Chen was surprised inside. He could sense that the Hall Master was gathering all the energy in the surrounding radius of 100,000 kilometers. Even with the Hall Master's strength as a Saint Emperor, he needed to do something so tremendous as to use a secret technique. It was difficult to imagine just how powerful it would be. Jian Chen no longer hesitated and attacked first. He used the illusory flash and rapidly approached the Hall Master, using all he had to stop the Hall Master from continuing what he was doing. The Hall Master shot back, avoiding Jian Chen completely. However, Jian Chen relentlessly pursued him as a blur. He was no slower than the Hall Master. The Hall Master was currently casting the secret technique, so he was unable to stop. He could not avoid Jian Chen, so he immediately turned into a half-serpent, half-man monstrosity. His lower half resembled a snake while his upper half remained human. His tail whipped toward Jian Chen at the speed of lightning. Jian Chen did not dodge the attack. He used his sword qi to strike the tail. With a crisp sound, several dozen hand-sized scales were cut off. A deep gash appeared on the Hall Master's tail and blood profusely poured out. However, the Hall Master did not do anything in response to Jian Chen's attack. He continued to use his tail to attack Jian Chen while his hands continued to dance before him, alternating between different hand seals. He continued to cast his secret technique. The secret technique was extremely powerful. He needed to charge it up even when casting it with his strength. This was the first time he had used it as well, and he was actually using it on an opponent who was not even an emperor. The battle prowess and unprecedented talent Jian Chen had exhibited had already caused the Hall Master to feel dread. Jian Chen was fighting a Saint Emperor without being a Saint Emperor. If he did end up becoming one, barely anyone in the world be his opponent, so the Hall Master had made up his mind. He would take Jian Chen's life today no matter how dire the consequences would be. Boom! 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 The Hall Master quickly swept his tail toward Jian Chen as a blur. Whenever it struck the ground, there would be a heavy sound. Every single attack was enough to create a bottomless hole in the earth. Dust and sand was kicked into the air, causing the battleground to become hazy. Blood ran from the corner of Jian Chen's mouth since he had been struck several times. He was quite injured, but was still struggling to stop the Hall Master. On the other hand, the Hall Master's tail had become bloody as well. A large portion of the scales on it were gone, having been reduced to a mess by the sword qi. Tai Ta had watched the battle from afar with brimming interest as battle intent burned within his eyes. He mumbled, "This is also a Class 9 magical beast, but it's even more difficult to deal with than the Class 9 Xianhuang beasts in the Xianhuang microcosm. Fighting against magical beasts with intelligence really is much more difficult than fighting against those without it. I need to take part as well." A dazzling, golden light rose from Tai Ta's body as an axe appeared in his hand. He swung it at the Hall Master from afar. The Hall Master was surprised inside. Although he had sensed Tai Ta's existence long ago, he did not pay any attention to it because the presence Tai Ta gave off was only of the 16th star. The Hall Master had never thought that Tai Ta would be a deviant as well, able to exhibit attacks no weaker than emperors with his strength at the 16th star. The Hall Master dodged Tai Ta's attack, which was followed by a flash. The Hall Master's tail was swung toward Tai Ta with lightning-like speed. Boom! Tai Ta was struck in the back and his entire body was blown away. However, he was very tough since he was war god. After taking a blow from a Saint Emperor, his battle prowess was not influenced, so he quickly flew back to join the fight. He worked with Jian Chen to deal with the Hall Master. Chapter 1333. The Serpent Ancestor Tai Ta was injured from the first clash, but not only did the injury fail to disturb his morale, it even made the battle intent within him burn hotter. The resplendent light on him became even brighter and more dazzling, illuminating the entire area. The light dyed the sky gold. At that moment, Tai Ta, Jian Chen, and the Hall Master seemed like three miniature suns of different colors. Each of them glowed bright while their radiance illuminated the sky. It was a grand view. Mysteries of war, mortality breaker. Tai Ta yelled out as he radiated with a supreme battle intent that permeated the surroundings. He held his axe with two hands as it exploded with light. Terrifying energy pulsed from it as the surrounding space became very unstable. Tai Ta swung his axe, which turned into a resplendent streak of light, toward the upper half of the Hall Master. He wanted to disrupt his process of casting the secret technique. At the same time, Jian Chen dealt an extremely powerful attack. A 3-meter-long sword qi had appeared in his hand, shining with a powerful, white light before he tore the Hall Master across from him. The attack contained strands of chaotic force. The Hall Master finally became stern. Even though neither one of them had reached Saint Emperor, the battle prowess that both Jian Chen and Tai Ta displayed was extraordinarily terrifying, no weaker than an emperor. It was equivalent to facing two experts of the same level as him right now. At the same time, they were not two ordinary emperors either. Jian Chen's sword qi matched the power of emperors, but it possessed a sharpness that an emperor's power did not possess, causing it to become even more powerful than an emperor's power in a certain sense. On the other hand, Tai Ta's battle intent could unknowingly influence the souls of people. The Hall Master could not help but waver when his soul was struck by the battle intent. He could feel his morale collapse bit by bit. Other than that, Tai Ta's mysteries of war were abilities that completely surpassed Saint-Tier battle skills. They were absolutely horrifying when it came to power. Some of Tai Ta's attacks, with his current strength, were even more terrifying than someone who had recently become a Saint Emperor. The Hall Master's tail surged as it cracked through the air. He wanted to use his tail to stop Jian Chen and Tai Ta. He had already reached the final stages of casting his secret technique. Tai Ta's axe landed on the tail and left behind a vicious gash. Blue blood shot into the air like fireworks. Jian Chen went after the Hall Master's head from the other side. He was like a streak of light, having pushed his speed to the limits. In the end, the Hall Master avoided Jian Chen's fatal attack. Although the sword qi failed to hit his head, his body was still pierced. The sword qi emerged from the Hall Master's back with a dazzling glow, piercing through his chest. The Hall Master grunted as blood flowed from the corner of his lips. His face had become pale. Another strand of sword qi was deposited in his body, beginning to wreak havoc the moment the sword qi made contact with him. "You're all dead today. None of you will escape here." The Hall Master bellowed at the sky. The battle was shameful for him. With his status, he had actually been reduced to such a horrible position by two juniors who were not even Saint Emperors. This was not something he could endure. A vast pressure radiated from the Hall Master in a bold manner, filling the surroundings. Even the experts several 100,000 kilometers away could clearly sense it. The Hall Master had finally completed casting the absolutely secret technique. A huge serpent dragon soared through the sky. It was over 30,000 meters long and radiated a terrifying pressure. Not only did it alarm countless experts in the territory of the Serpent God Hall, even the experts in nearby regions of the Heaven's Spirit Hall and Sea Goddess Hall sensed it as well. All the experts paled in fright as they gazed over from afar. This was because they could actually feel fear forming in the depths of their souls from this pressure. Some of their legs had even begun to tremble, almost causing them to drop to their knees involuntarily. The huge dragon traveled through the sky. Every single scale flickered with light. It roared at the sky and the sound was deafening. It then shifted its eyes onto Jian Chen and Tai Ta, becoming fixated on them. Jian Chen and Tai Ta shivered inside. They both stopped their attacks as they uneasily stared at the dragon in the sky. They had faced against a Class 10 Xianhuang beast before, so they possessed a certain level of understanding in regard to power at that level. They felt like they were facing a Class 10 Xianhuang beast from the presence radiating from the serpent dragon. Several streaks of light shot over from afar with lightning-like speed before stopping several dozen kilometers away. They were spectators watching the battle from afar. They were the Hall Elders of the Serpent God Hall. Every single one of them was a Saint King at great perfection. They had tailed the Hall Master when he had left and only arrived here just now. This is the Serpent Ancestor. He was the strongest Hall Master in ancient times, having reached the peak of Emperor within 2,000 years of cultivation. He was only a step away from surpassing Saint Emperor, but unfortunately, he failed to break through within the next 8,000 years. He died with a grudge. The Hall Master has actually summoned the Serpent Ancestor's deceased spirit using a secret technique so that he can display his former glory once again, a Hall Elder cried out. He was filled with disbelief. He struggled to imagine just how powerful the opponent of the Hall Master, a leader he respected very much, was for him to resort to something like this. Who are the two people fighting the Hall Master? How can they force the Hall Master to use something like that? Are they emperors as well? But that's impossible. There are no other emperors other than the Hall Masters of the Heaven's Spirit Hall and the Sea Goddess Hall besides him. The presence and ripples of energies from the two people confirm that it's impossible for them to be the other two Hall Masters. Oh no, the Hall Master's been injured. His tail has already been reduced to a bloody mess. The esteemed Hall Elders of the Serpent God Hall all cried out as shock filled them. Since when did two great experts like that appear in the sea realm? How could they force the Hall Master into such an awful position? After all, the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall was an emperor who had reached that level of cultivation many years ago. He had traveled a very long distance in that realm of cultivation. The serpent ancestor suddenly opened its mouth and sucked at Jian Chen and Tai Ta. Immediately, a terrifying suction force appeared, pulling Jian Chen and Tai Ta off of the ground. They uncontrollably flew toward its mouth. They could not break free from it no matter what. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta bellowed as he began to shine with a dazzling, golden light. A supreme battle intent fused with his axe as an invisible energy. He then swung his axe at the serpent ancestor. Jian Chen also struck out as hard as he could. Silver-white light enveloped his entire body, and with a wave of his hand, he shot out a 3-meter-long sword chi, cooperating with Tai Ta's attack. However, their two attacks failed to injure the serpent ancestor. He was a peak saint emperor in the past and had remained like that for 8,000 years. His strength had reached a shocking level. Even if he was already dead, the spirit summoned by the Hall Master was still extremely powerful. Quickly cut through the surrounding space so the suction will be dispersed through there. It can stop us from being sucked away, said Jian Chen. When he had attacked just before and shook up space, he could clearly feel the suction force weaken slightly. The strength of the serpent ancestor really surprised Jian Chen. He was unwilling to be sucked away no matter what. After all, this was not a mindless Xianhuang beast. It was being controlled by the Hall Master. Tai Ta did not hesitate to try Jian Chen's suggestion. He immediately struck the space in front of him with Jian Chen. Their attacks caused the space to violently tremble before a few slight cracks appeared. These cracks were effective. They allowed the two of them to break free from the suction force. They then made their way around the serpent ancestor's body on different sides and sent barrages at it with all they had. The Hall Master had vanished. He had disappeared into the serpent ancestor's body. Although the serpent ancestor temporarily possessed its ancient might because its spirit had been summoned, the person truly in control of the whole thing was the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall. Chapter 1334, Yedrium appears Clang. Clang. Jian Chen and Tai Ta's attacks landed on the body of the serpent ancestor, but a metallic sound was the only thing produced. Although the serpent ancestor's body was condensed from the surrounding energy of the world by the Hall Master, the body still possessed some of its former prowess since it contained a sliver of the serpent ancestor's deceased spirit. It was so tough that it had reached a shocking level. Both Jian Chen and Tai Ta were unable to harm it at all. It was like the serpent ancestor from the ancient times had returned, which was extremely terrifying. However, it was still only a secret technique. It was only able to demonstrate a certain level of the serpent ancestor's strength, unable to display all of his might from the past. Although Jian Chen and Tai Ta failed to harm the serpent ancestor at all, they could clearly feel that a vast amount of energy within it was rapidly being consumed. Jian Chen and Tai Ta remained silent as they continued to attack the serpent ancestor as fast as they could to waste its energy. Both of them understood that the secret technique the Hall Master had cast would break once the energy ran out, and thus, the serpent ancestor would vanish. The Hall Master, who was currently in the serpent ancestor's head, knew Jian Chen and Tai Ta's intentions. He immediately sneered and said, "This secret technique was personally left behind by the serpent ancestor. It's the treasure of our serpent god hall. I've expended so much vitality to cast this secret technique, so how can I let you break through it so easily?" The serpent ancestor's body churned in the sky. As if it was just far too big, the entire sky seemed to be filled. When it moved, it immediately caused the air in the surrounding area to surge, causing wild gales and a series of crackles. The serpent ancestor moved far too quickly, so the air crackled from static electricity. The serpent ancestor arrived at an altitude of 30,000 meters in the air within a single movement, not too far away from the barrier of the sea realm. Afterward, it struck out with a claw, enveloping a region several hundred meters wide. It locked down that region as it fell toward Jian Shen and Tai Ta with lightning-like speed. When the claw fell, a mysterious energy surged out, causing the space to ripple. Jian Shen and Tai Ta's faces changed slightly. Although they had not become trapped, they felt like they had sunk into mud, where their movements became abnormally sluggish. Even with his protective glow, Jian Shen was affected. The serpent ancestor's claw continued through the air with little resistance from anything. Jian Shen and Tai Ta were unable to dodge, so they had no other choice but to attack the claw as hard as they could since the claw was rapidly approaching them. With a boom, Jian Shen and Tai Ta's attacks struck the claw, but they did not prevent it from falling down. In the end, the claw still moved through where they were and viciously smashed into the ground, creating a heavy rumble. The earth violently shook as the mountains became riddled with cracks. It was as if a great earthquake had occurred, spreading for several 100,000 kilometers. The huge imprint of a claw appeared on the ground. It was so deep that it seemed bottomless. Jian Shen and Tai Ta seemed to have disappeared, having been pushed into the ground. Only a huge serpent dragon hovered in the air. A burning golden and white light twinkled from the bottomless pit as Jian Shen and Tai Ta flew out together, bathed in golden and white light. The light was clearly dimmer than before, and both their faces were rather pale. A streak of blood ran from the corner of their lips. They were in horrible conditions, having been heavily injured. A tremendous pressure fell from the sky. The serpent's tail whipped down from above like a bolt of lightning. Just the pressure of the air it had created was enough to cause the ground to sink. Every single strike from the serpent ancestor was significant. Jian Shen and Tai Ta separated and dodged as fast as they could. This was a tough battle. Jian Shen and Tai Ta could easily hunt Class 9 Xianhuang beasts in the Xianhuang microcosm by themselves. Even peak Class 9 Xianhuang beasts didn't pose a problem to them, but the Hall Master was a Saint Emperor that possessed intelligence, many secret techniques, and rich battle experience. He was far more difficult to deal with than peak Class 9 Xianhuang beasts. Jian Shen and Tai Ta worked together as they fought against the Hall Master in an intense fashion in the sky. Their battle was extremely destructive. The ripples from the battle wreaked havoc in the surrounding 100,000 kilometers. The ground was reduced to a mess, completely different from how it had looked before. Jian Shen and Tai Ta received heavy injuries several times. If it was anyone else, they probably would have fallen long ago, but one of them was in possession of the chaotic body while the other was a war god. They were in no sense ordinary. They were extremely tough, which was why they could last so long and maintain their peak condition prowess. The three of them fought for half a day without stopping. Even the Hall Master had become rather exhausted. He rarely ever experienced battles after he had become an emperor, and it had been a long time since he had fought in such an intense fashion. This infuriated him, but also made him feel extremely helpless because Jian Shen and Tai Ta were just powerful enough. They seemed like they were invincible where they possessed unending vitality. No matter how heavily injured they became, they could endure their wounds while their battle prowess did not decrease at all. Quite a few people had gathered in the surroundings now. The battle between the three of them had alerted half of the sea realm. Not only had the experts in the territory of Serpent God Hall hurried over, there were even people from the Heaven Spirit Hall and Sea Goddess Hall that had come over to watch as well. All the people who had come, without any exception, were Saint Kings. They all remained several dozen kilometers away and none of them dared to get any closer because they could not endure the ripples that were created in this battle. The most eye-catching part of the crowd was a majestic divine hall. It was the Octaterra divine hall that Jian Shen had left in the Turtle clan. Because they were worried about Jian Shen's safety, Qing Yishuan and the others had hurried over from the Sea Goddess Hall's territory in the divine hall. The Saint Kings gathered in the Divine Hall watched the three emperors fight their intense battle with great attention. Every single one of them was shocked because they had believed that the Sea Realm only possessed 3 emperors, the leaders of the 3 territories. However, 2 experts had suddenly appeared and could fight the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall even-handedly. Not only did this shock Qin Yishuan and the others, all the Saint Kings who witnessed this felt the same. Saint Kings at great perfection did not possess this strength. The only explanation was that the 2 experts were emperors as well. At this moment, a similar thought crossed all their minds. Just where did these 2 unfamiliar emperors come from? Why do I feel like the emperor shining with a dazzling, golden light seems familiar, as if I've seen him before? Tai Do stared at Tai Ta and asked a question out of curiosity. I sense that familiarity as well. He's extremely similar to the golden-skinned friend that would stay Jian Chen's side, Qin Yishuan said in a heavy voice as her eyes shone with interest, as if she wanted to see through the 2 of them. This was due to the fact that both Jian Chen and Tai Ta were enshrouded by a powerful layer of light, making it impossible to distinguish who they were. They only seemed like 2 streaks of light that moved about rapidly. I feel that as well. If that really is Jian Chen's friend, then is the other emperor, Lan Jing said before pausing. However, what he had said was enough to cause the hearts of the other Saint Kings in the Divine Hall to churn. Recurrence of the Serpent Ancestor. Spiritual sacrifice. The Hall Master roared at the sky. Seeing how he was unable to kill Jian Chen and Tai Ta after so long, he planned on using his final trump card. He would sacrifice the spirit of the Serpent Ancestor to make it even stronger and, hence, deal the killing blow to Jian Chen and Tai Ta in one stroke. He would not be able to remain at ease if Jian Chen and Tai Ta did not die today. Immediately, an even more terrifying presence radiated from the Serpent Ancestor. At that moment, the deceased spirit seemed to have become a bundle of flames as it roared away. The spirit was currently being sacrificed and approached destruction. It's time for you to stop. At this moment, a long sigh rang through the surroundings. Several dozen kilometers away, a slender beauty shrouded in blue light appeared. With a flash, she traversed the distance and stopped before Jian Chen and Tai Ta. She calmly stared at the Hall Master and said, in the past, the Serpent Ancestor was supreme. No one among the 4 races was his opponent. He stood as the most powerful in the world. He was loved and admired by everyone. After he passed away, his spirit remained, always secretly protecting the Serpent God Hall, which has earned him all our admiration. Are you trying to destroy the Serpent Ancestor's spirit over your personal grievances today? You little Yadrium, you have no right to stick your nose in the matters of my Serpent God Hall as a part of the Sea Goddess Hall, the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall coldly responded, but he showed no intention of stopping. He continued on the path of sacrificing the Serpent Ancestor's spirit. Chapter 1335, Emperor of the Turtle Clan, Kong Tai, do not be stubborn. Out of all the past emperors in our sea realm, the Serpent Ancestor was the one most worthy of our respect and admiration. He did many things for our sea race in his lifetime and possesses great merit. How can I watch you destroy his spirit? Yedrium gently replied. Her voice was calm and without emotion. With that, a vast presence no weaker than the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall radiated from her body. Terrifying pulses of energy erupted like flash floods and surged through the surroundings. The Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall personally struck out. She formed a seal with a jade-white hand of hers and gathered energy from the surroundings. She was casting a powerful secret technique. At that moment, all the spectators focused their attention and became fixated on the sights of the battle. Every single one of them had gazes filled with excitement and anticipation. The 2 Hall Masters were about to clash. It had already been several years since the last battle between emperors, so it obviously roused everyone's interest. They wanted to see who was weaker. Let's retreat some more just in case we are injured by the ripples of battle, a Saint King suggested while watching the spectacle from afar. He then immediately retreated over 10 kilometers. He arrived at a location he believed to be safe. The other people felt the same. They were already far away enough from the battlefield, but they all retreated a certain amount of distance once again. Even the hall elders of the Serpent God Hall did the same. Yadrium, are you really going to fight me? The hall master of the Serpent God Hall's eyes brightly burned with rage. He stared fixedly at the hall master of the Sea Goddess Hall while his eyes burned with heavy hatred. He knew that it would be impossible for him to kill Jian Chen and Tai Ta if she wanted to protect the two of them, which was something he was very unwilling to let happen. If he did not eliminate the two of them today, they would become a great problem in the future. The energy in the surroundings gathered in Yadrium's hand before condensing into a silver-white trident. Yadrium wielded it with a single hand and said, I have to stop you to protect the spirit of the serpent ancestor from being ended by your hands. Yadrium acted in an extremely decisive manner as she stabbed her trident at the huge serpent dragon as soon as she finished speaking. The trident turned into a resplendent streak of silver-white light as it crossed the space at an unbelievable speed. It shot toward the head of the serpent ancestor. Boom! With a loud sound, the serpent ancestor's head suddenly exploded, expanding in all directions as ripples of energy. It caused a violent storm to occur in the surroundings. Yadrium's strike was a significant blow, destroying the hall master of the Serpent God Hall's secret technique in a single stroke. As soon as the head exploded, the serpent ancestor's body quickly began to collapse into energy before dispersing into the surroundings. The tremendous body of the serpent ancestor was condensed by the hall master of the Serpent God Hall through a secret technique. Now that Yadrium had dispersed its energy, she had saved the serpent ancestor's spirit, preventing the hall master from using his trump card. The hall master's body was forced out as well. He appeared high in the sky. He was in a horrible shape, having lost his former awe long ago. However, his eyes shone with a vicious and penetrating light and were filled with an endless fury and hatred. Yadrium no longer paid any attention to the hall master. She turned to Jian Chen and Tai Ta and only produced an emotional sigh after quite some time. Jian Chen, you've really taken me aback today. I never thought that your strength would have reached such a level in such a short amount of time. Her Majesty really has not chosen the wrong person. I thank the hall master for your praise, Jian Chen replied with clasped hands. Although he was in horrible shape, he was brimming with energy. Return soon. There are even more important matters to deal with, Yadrium softly warned him before leaving as a blur with a single movement. She disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen stared at the hall master of the Serpent God Hall, who was also in a horrible shape, and could not help but sneer, esteemed hall master, you probably never expected an outcome like this, right? You got Tao Jingtian to lead me into your territory so you could personally deal with me. However, not only have you failed to kill me, you've been reduced to such a horrible shape as well. The hall master's face immediately darkened because of Jian Chen's mocking tone. His chest rose and fell violently. To think that he, a ruler of an entire region, would be mocked in such a fashion today with his supreme status. He felt like his chest was about to explode from anger. However, he also knew that it was impossible for him to slay the two of them in his current shape. Although the two of them seemed heavily injured, their battle prowess was not affected at all. There were no benefits in continuing the battle because he had become even more injured after taking a blow from Yadrium. Tai Ta, let's go. Jian Chen did not stick around. He signaled to Tai Ta before they both flew toward the Octaterra Divine Hall. When the Saint Kings and Elders in the Divine Hall saw that the two mysterious emperors were actually Jian Chen and Tai Ta, all of them became stunned, remaining dazed for quite a long time. Although the Saint Kings had already gained a vague idea of the identity of the two emperors, they still felt disbelief after their guesses were confirmed. The ruler, it's actually the ruler. The emperor who fought against the hall master of the Serpent God Hall is actually our ruler, an elder said in excitement as his body violently trembled. He began to cry from joy. The spectating Saint Kings were all shocked and they heard what he said. The Turtle clan had actually given birth to an emperor. That was a matter that could shake up the entire sea realm, and from the situation earlier, the other emperor seemed to be on very good terms with the emperor of the Turtle clan. This was a significant matter. Let's talk after we return. You all return to the Divine Hall first. We'll leave this place right now, Jian Shen said to the group of people. Jian Shen was now like a god to the clansmen of the Turtle Clan. All of them were extremely obedient and followed his orders, all returning to the Divine Hall. With a wave of his hand, the Divine Hall shrank before flying into his hand, no larger than the size of a fist. Afterward, he left with Tai Ta, returning to the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall. He did this because he could already sense that the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall had already come and had secretly remained hidden. This was not a good situation for Jian Shen. He had wiped out a clone of the Hall Master and caused him an extremely severe loss. The two of them had already fallen out, so he worried that he would end up working with the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall to deal with him and Tai Ta. If I forge the Azulite swords, I'll be able to deal with them easily even if the two Hall Masters work together, Jian Shen thought. He needed an immortal tier sword to use the Sword Origin realm to its greatest potential. Without the Azulite swords, it was like he was fighting people with his bare hands. He would always be at a disadvantage. I've already gathered all the materials. I just need to forge the swords next, but forging them will not be easy. I need to make a lot of preparations and enough time. Jian Shen looked forward to the moment when he forged the two swords, but he needed to go to the Sea of Despair with the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall in 3 days. He did not have the time at the moment. Chapter 1336. Renowned throughout the Sea Realm, Jian Shen returned to the Turtle Clan with Tai Ta and the Octaterra Divine Hall, but the spectating Saint Kings did not disperse for a very long time. Every single of them remained there and secretly communicated with one another, discussing the Emperor of the Turtle Clan and how he worked with another unknown emperor to fight the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall. They discussed these matters in an extremely secretive manner, afraid that the furious Hall Master would hear what they were talking about. All of them, experts who had stayed in the Sea Realm for many years, knew extremely well that the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall was someone who had become an emperor long ago. He had already made it a considerable distance within the realm, so they all felt extremely shocked, and the Emperor of the Turtle Clan, who had just broken through, was able to fight him even-handedly and even injure him. Although the Emperor of the Turtle Clan had worked with someone else, they were still able to distinguish the strong and the weak even at the same level of cultivation. I never thought that the ruler of the Turtle Clan would have become an emperor. This really is unbelievable. In the history of the Turtle Clan, we only had a few experts at the level of Hall Elders even in our most glorious times. The only emperor of our clan in all of history has been born. I wonder who the other emperor is and how he is connected to the Emperor of the Turtle Clan. I never thought that the number of emperors in the Sea Realm would increase by 2 in a single stroke. And now that both of these emperors have gone off to the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, I wonder if the balance of the Sea Realm will change with the birth of these 2 emperors. The various experts discussed the situation. Before now, there had only been 3 emperors, and they had all ruled in their own region. Now that another 2 emperors had appeared together, the balance of the Sea Realm would definitely shift dramatically. The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall clearly thought of this matter as well. His face darkened in a terrifying manner. Even when ignoring the threat Jian Shen posed to him, just the appearance of 2 emperors would cause severe threats to the Serpent God Gaul. At the same time, they had fallen out with Jian Shen, so he really did worry a little whether Jian Shen and Tai Ta would deal heavy blows to his authority over the land of the Serpent God Hall. The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall was secretly hiding in the surroundings by erasing his presence. He stared at the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall silently before shifting his eyes in the direction that Jian Shen had traveled. His eyes were extremely profound. I never thought that Jian Shen's strength would increase so quickly. He really is worthy of being called an unprecedented genius. The Hall Master only produced a long sigh inside after quite some time. Jian Shen's speed of growth had exceeded what he could imagine. He knew that it was very difficult for him to threaten Jian Shen now. Since Jian Shen was able to reduce the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall to such a horrible condition, it meant that Jian Shen also possessed the strength to take him on. Jian Shen was no longer the ant of the past. Jianshen is too close to the sea goddess hall. This is not good, the hall master thought. His eyes twinkled a few times before he silently left. The turtle clan became lively once again after a few days of calm in the territory of the sea goddess hall. All the clansmen had hid in the Octaterra divine hall due to the threat of the Tao family, but now that the threat had been dealt with, all the clansmen could return to their homes. The turtle clan was in jubilation today. They were brimming with joy. Every single member of the clan wore a smile. They were extremely happy and joyful, while many of them had begun to sing from the joy they felt. This was because the entire clan knew that their esteemed ruler had become an emperor now, an expert who could stand on the same level as the hall master of the Sea Goddess Hall, Serpent God Hall, and Heaven's Spirit Hall. Not only was this a great honor for the turtle clan, it was also a demonstration of their strength and an increase in their status. And other than their ruler possessed a very close friend who was also an emperor. Currently, the clan possessed 2 emperors, while even the 3 halls that ruled the lands only possessed a single emperor each. Soon after Jianshen had returned to the clan, the news of the ruler of the turtle clan's breakthrough to emperor took the entire sea realm by storm. The news immediately shook up the whole place. Many people sighed in surprise while voicing their doubts. At that moment, all the people and organizations in the sea realm discussed this news. There were many important figures of peak organizations who headed to the turtle clan with expensive gifts to confirm this matter. In recent years, the sea realm had always stood balanced between 3 organizations. Now that 2 emperors had suddenly appeared, it was an extremely significant matter and caused shock to ripple through the entire realm. Many people wondered if the balance would be broken or not. Jianshen had no idea that his breakthrough to emperor had already spread through the sea realm like wildfire and taken them by storm. He was currently in a meeting in the conference hall of the turtle clan. Qi Nishuan, Tai Do, Lan Jing, Xian Pian, and Mokas had all come while the saint ruler elders of the clan gathered below. All of the elders were flushed in the face due to becoming overexcited. I've gathered everyone here today to announce a few matters. The first matter is that from today on, the turtle clan is able to stand properly in the sea realm. There is no need to fear any organizations, Jianshen said in high spirits as he gave off a powerful confidence. He possessed enough strength to utter those words now. A cheer of joy immediately rang out from below. A few elders cried from their joy and excitement. They had never been so glorious in the history of the entire clan. Seeing the moved elders below, Jianshen could not help but think of the Grand Elder of the Turtle Clan's face. He sighed inside and thought, Grand Elder, I've already completed most of your final wish. Without long, even without me, the Turtle Clan will be able to stand supreme within the sea realm. Jianshen continued a while later after everyone had calmed down. The second matter is that I've captured all the important members of the Tao family alliance. They had threatened to destroy the Turtle Clan, so I will hand these people over to you to be dealt with. Jianshen released Tao Jingtian and the other 4 Saint Kings from the artifact space. All of them were heavily injured and basically incapacitated. They did not even have the energy to run. We have to kill these people, so we can pacify all our deceased clansmen with their blood. That's the only way we can give an explanation to our fallen clansmen, the elders righteously demanded. Their hatred for the 5 Saint Kings had reached the limits. In the end, the 5 Saint Kings were taken away. They were destined to suffer a very miserable fate, but Jianshen did not pay any more attention to the matter. Chapter 1337, Treasury of the Tao Family, 1. Jianshen glanced over Tai Do, Lan Jing, Xian Pian, and Mokas. After a moment of silence, he said, Tai Do, Lan Jing, Xian Pian, and Mokas, you were initially forced to join this big family with no other choice. I will give you a chance. If you want to leave, I will not stop you. I will gift you some heavenly resources so your strength can increase. After all, you have worked hard for the Turtle Clan in recent times and have committed a meritorious service. Tai Do dropped to his knees without second thought with that. He politely said, Ruler, I will not be leaving. I am willing to stay at the Turtle Clan forever. I may not be a clansman of the Turtle Clan, but if I can become one of the senior members and follow the ruler, I will work until the day my heart stops beating. Lan Jing, Xianpian, and Mochas on the other hand did not hurry to speak their thoughts. They looked at one another and were rather hesitant. They were originally the disciplinary elders of the Heaven Spirit Hall and had once participated in the pursuit of Jian Chen with the divine generals of the Serpent God Hall, so they had been forced to follow Jian Chen with no other choice, similar to Tai Do. The three of them hesitated for a very long time before finally making up their minds. Lan Jing said, "Ruler, we want to return to the Heaven Spirit Hall because that was where we grew up. We have deep ties with the Heaven Spirit Hall. It's like our home." Jian Chen sighed inside and a sliver of disappointment flashed through his eyes. He said, "I respect your choice. You may return whenever you choose to. However, I will give you all a gift before you leave for your great services to the Turtle Clan in the past. I thank the ruler for your intentions. We are already extremely grateful that the ruler is willing to allow us to return to the Heaven Spirit Hall, so how can we accept a gift from you? We are not worthy of accepting it," Xianpian replied. He felt ashamed because, from a certain perspective, their lives already belonged to Jian Chen. They already felt so shameful that they could not look back at Jian Chen when they actually wanted to leave right now. However, the Heaven Spirit Hall just held an extraordinary position in their hearts. They really did want to return if they could. Jian Chen raised his hand to stop Xianpian. He said, "Before you decline me, do know that my gift can allow your strength to skyrocket such that you can reach the level of Hall Elders in the shortest amount of time possible." Lan Jing, Xianpian, and Mochas all raised their heads to look at Jian Chen as shock filled their faces. They did not doubt what Jian Chen had said. After all, he was already an emperor now, so why would he lie? What they found unbelievable was that Jian Chen would actually give them something so valuable. The three of them felt utterly ashamed when they thought about how Jian Chen had given them their freedom and was even giving them such a great gift. Jian Chen waved his hand at the three of them and said, "You can go first. I'll send people over to you with the gifts later, and you'll be free after that. I will no longer be interfering with any of your matters. You can leave whenever you wish." Lan Jing, Xianpian, and Mochas all bowed at Jian Chen before leaving the hall. With a wave of his hand, Jian Chen threw a ring at Qin Yishuan, who was currently staring at him in a daze. He said, "Qin Yishuan, the Tao family no longer exists in the Sea Realm from today on. That's the space ring on Tao Jingtian. Have a look and see if what you need is in there." The space ring hovered before Qin Yishuan as an invisible force kept it in the air. Qin Yishuan only seemed to return to her senses then. She grabbed the space ring absent-mindedly and began to search through it. A while later, she became slightly disappointed and said, "There isn't what I need in it. However, the Tao family has a treasury that not many people know about. Most of their valuable treasures and important items are stored there. I think the item I'm looking for is in there." With a flick of her finger, she immediately sent the space ring back to Jian Chen. "Do you know the location of the treasury?" Jian Chen calmly asked. Even though it was the treasury of an ancient peak-level clan, there was rarely anything that could interest Jian Chen now. He had reached a new level of understanding, so ordinary treasures were like nothing to him now. However, the Turtle Clan lacked resources right now, so the accumulated resources of the Tao family just happened to be able to make up for that fact. "I know where it is, but before we go, I want to confirm something with you. Are you a Saint Emperor or not?" Qin Yishuan asked as she stared fixedly at Jian Chen. Although she had personally witnessed Jian Chen's great fight against the Hall Master, she still refused to believe that someone, who was not even as strong as her when they first met, could actually become a Saint Emperor in such a short amount of time. After all, Jian Chen was not even a Saint King when he had first stolen the Octaterra map fragment from her. "I'm still not a Saint Emperor, but if I really end up fighting, I am no weaker than a Saint Emperor," Jian Chen faintly smiled. Qin Yishuan gasped and began to look at Jian Chen as if she were looking at a monster. She said, the rate your strength increases really is stunning. You should be able to enter the Tao family's secret treasury since you have that much strength. We should not delay this matter, so let's head off right now. Ruler, the ancestor of the Enlil clan has come to visit. He wishes to see the ruler. At this moment, a guard ran in from outside and politely reported the arrival of an envoy. The Enlil clan? Jian Chen softly repeated the name. He was not unfamiliar with the name. It was one of the powerful clans in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, no weaker than the Tao family. The ancestor of the Centaur clan had come, the former patriarch of the Lanson clan has come, the former patriarch of the Shao tribe has come, many other important figures from various organizations and clans had come to visit the Turtle clan after the Enlil clan. They were all large organizations that reigned supreme in certain regions of the Sea Goddess Hall. Some of them were even more powerful than the Tao family. Jian Chen frowned. He had expected this, but it had happened a little too soon. After all, he had only just returned to the Turtle clan. However, Jian Chen did not plan on receiving the people personally. He knew that the true intention of the people who had come was only to confirm whether the Turtle clan possessed an emperor or not. He just got Tai Ta to stay behind, so he could receive the guests instead of himself. Jian Chen instead hurried off with Qin Yishuan, headed to the treasury of the Tao family. The location of the treasury was over 100,000 kilometers away from the Turtle clan in a swamp. The environment of the swamp was horrendous, teeming with danger and covered in a layer of potent poisonous gas all year round. Jian Chen and Qin Yishuan ignored the gas and made their way to the depths. There they came across a valley that seemed to open up the further and they headed. Suddenly, a dark shadow attacked. It struck like lightning, charging at Jian Chen and Qin Yishuan. It was coated in an extremely potent poisonous gas. Even Saint Kings could not treat it carelessly. Jian Chen did not even glance at it. Extending his finger, he shot out a finger-sized sword qi, which pierced the shadow. Chapter 1338, Treasury of the Tao Family, 2, Bang. The black shadow landed beside Jian Chen's foot and lay there without moving. Only then could they see the shadow's true appearance. It was a 10-meter-long, mutated lizard. Its skin was pitch black and was covered in an oozing substance. It gave off an extremely offensive smell. The lizard possessed an extremely powerful poison. Blood poured from the wound in its head, which had been caused by Jian Chen, and hit the ground, which actually dissolved the soil. A hole appeared and rapidly grew deeper. Jian Chen extended his finger a few more times and shot a few more sword qi at the corpse. Every single strand of sword qi was extremely powerful, easily penetrating the lizard's body. In the end, he removed a fist-sized monster core from the corpse and held it in his hand. Even without any protection, the acidic poison on it could not harm him at all. Jian Chen used a clump of soil to wipe off the poison before storing it in his space ring. The mutated lizard was a Class 8 magical beast. The monster core it possessed was extremely valuable. Even if he had no use for it, he could give it to the experts of the Changyang clan. Qin Yishuan stared at the dead lizard as she stood beside Jian Chen. She was secretly taken aback. The lizard was no weaker than her, so if she had to fight it, it would have taken her a tremendous amount of effort before she would have been able to slay it. She had never expected it to be killed off by Jian Chen in such an easy fashion, where it was no different from an ant. This was extremely shocking to her. Is this the strength of Saint Emperors? It's actually so terrifying. If Jian Chen used that attack on me, I wonder if I would end up like the lizard or not. Qin Yishuan was extremely astounded inside. She already understood everything now. The bastard who had not been anywhere near her strength before had already become an existence that she could only look up to. Qin Yishuan was immediately taken by an odd feeling when she thought of how she had pursued Jian Chen for so long even after reducing him to such a horrible shape in the past. She had even begun to gently smile to herself because she had hunted down a Saint Emperor in the past. Is this where the treasury of the Tao family is? Jian Chen no longer paid any attention to the lizard's corpse. He let it lie there. Even though it was the corpse of a Class 8 magical beast, he had no intentions of taking it with him. He only looked around the valley carefully. Qing Yishuan dismissed her thoughts and stared at the valley. She said, "Correct, this is the place. When I secretly followed Tao Jingtian before, I saw him enter this valley. However, there are many hidden killing formations that are extremely powerful, which was why I did not follow him in. I do not know the exact location of the treasury in the valley. There really are a lot of formations in this valley. Even if a 9th heavenly layer Saint King enters, he will die if he is careless. These formations should have been personally cast down long ago by a Saint Emperor. It's impossible for Saint Kings to cast down such powerful formations," Jian Chen said. He had already expanded the senses of his soul to envelope the entire valley. He had found many formations hidden in it. The Tao family is a great clan that once gave birth to a Saint Emperor, but there were extremely many Saint Emperors in that era, nowhere near as scarce as nowadays. As a result, the Saint Emperor of the Tao family was not enough to lead the Tao family to extreme glory. These formations were probably cast down by him, so breaking through them will probably need an expert of the same strength, said Qing Yishuan as she looked at Jian Chen. It would all depend on Jian Chen if they could reach the treasures of the Tao family today. There was something she needed in there. Has no one ever discovered the treasury of the Tao family after so many years? Jian Chen asked. Qing Yishuan silently pondered before saying, "If I recall correctly, the past Saint Emperor of the Tao family had once used his abilities to engulf this valley and lock it up, causing it to be difficult to discover even by other Saint Emperors, which is why this place has never been discovered by others. However, with the passage of time, the abilities he had used lost their effects, which is why this place is now exposed. However, this place is extremely well hidden and no one comes here often. I had only accidentally learned of the treasury in the past and found it by secretly following Tao Jingtian here." Jian Chen nodded. He believed most of what Qing Yishuan had said because the valley really was prepared by a Saint Emperor. "Let's go in. Follow me carefully. I think I've found the exact location of the treasury," Jian Chen calmly informed her as he stepped into the valley. Immediately, the landscape around him underwent a sudden shift. The valley had vanished and he now stood atop a vast body of water. The waves surged into the sky as a huge beast charged over. Its presence was like a mountain while its pressure flooded the surroundings. It was a beast with the power of Saint Emperors. It was extraordinarily powerful. Jian Chen's face remained the same as he sighed. This formation really is extraordinary. Even if Saint Emperors want to destroy it, it'll take them quite the effort. Unfortunately, the formations decayed with the passage of time. Its strength has drastically been reduced and can no longer stand a blow from a Saint Emperor. Jian Chen swung his sleeve and shot out countless strands of sword qi. The sword qi split into two streams. One stream shot into the body of water while the other headed toward the air, shattering the air. Boom! With a great rumble, the space violently shook. Before the beast could reach Jian Chen, it had dissolved and the landscape around Jian Chen changed once again. The water disappeared as he returned to the valley. Afterward, Jian Chen continued into the depths with Qing Yishuan. They traveled like a hot knife through butter, sweeping through all the formations hidden on their path. The formations really were very powerful. They could stop Saint Emperors if they were in perfect condition, but they could only be used to deal with Saint Kings now. They were obviously not enough to stop Jian Chen. Soon afterward, the two of them arrived at the very depths of the valley. A bumpy cliff face stood before them. "We've reached the end of the valley," said Qing Yishuan. She looked around for any possible places. "It should be here." Jian Chen stared at the cliff face before him. The senses of his soul had already found that a formation was hiding something here. Boom! With a loud sound, Jian Chen shot a sword qi at the cliff face, causing the ground to violently shake while dust was kicked into the air. A huge cave appeared before the two of them. It was pitch black inside while a cold, moist wind blew out. Qing Yishuan's eyes narrowed. She had failed to find any signs of this place even from such a close distance. This made her sigh, praising the greatness of the formations here. The cave was very deep and sloped down into the ground. The two of them followed the slope and traveled for several kilometers before arriving in front of a huge stone gate. The gate was filled with pulses of powerful energy, causing it to become extremely tough. Jianshen did not destroy it forcefully in order to prevent the cave from collapsing. Instead, he used a strand of sword qi to cut out a hole 2 meters tall and wide so that they could enter. A huge space was hidden behind the door and countless luminous pearls of various colors were wedged in the ceiling. Most of them were fist-sized, but some were even the size of a human head. A mountainous pile of crystal coins was stacked neatly in a corner. They gave off an extremely dense water-attributed energy. These crystal coins had all surpassed grand quality and had reached the level of divine quality. A bookshelf made from rare metal held several dozen books in a neat fashion. Every single one of them was extremely crude and riddled with the marks of time, having existed for countless years without being destroyed. Chapter 1339. A damaged piece of divine armor. In the center of the room stood 2 large, square tablets. They were covered in beautiful and exquisite inscriptions depicting a human using an extremely powerful attack. Even though they were just carvings, they gave off an extraordinary feeling as if they vaguely contained the pressure of the world. Jianshen became fixated on the 2 tablets as joy appeared in his eyes. He had already realized that they were Saint-tier battle skills suitable for humans and that they were complete. The flame mercenaries had only been founded recently. They seemed powerful on the surface, but they lacked in certain areas far too much. High-tier battle skills like these just happened to be what the mercenaries were in urgent need of because it was impossible for the flame mercenaries to become truly independent and powerful without Saint-tier battle skills. And other than the flame mercenaries, the Changyang clan needed these items as well. It was a great harvest for Jianshen, finding 2 complete Saint-tier battle skills in the treasury of the Tao family. Jianshen swept his gaze around and discovered 2 weapons stabbed in a huge rock near the Saint-tier battle skills. One of them was a blade while the other was a sword. They were both enshrouded by an obscuring glow as they pulsed with powerful energy. Emperor armaments. Jianshen felt shocked once more. The treasury of the Tao family was far wealthier than he had ever imagined. Not only were there 2 complete Saint-tier battle skills, there were even emperor armaments. If these items were placed on the Tianyuan continent, Saint Kings would engage in bloody fights to obtain them. However, only humans could use the Saint-tier battle skills or the emperor armaments. Their power was limited when used by the sea race. As soon as Qing Yishuan entered the cave, her gaze became locked onto the emperor armaments and the Saint-tier battle skills. Her eyes burned with desire as she mumbled, "I once heard by accident that the ancestor of the Tao family had visited the Tianyuan continent and had a fortuitous encounter there. He came across a dwelling where a very powerful expert had passed away in meditation and really benefited from the encounter. Not only were there Saint-tier battle skills, there were even emperor armaments. Looks like it's true. Unfortunately, the emperor armaments can only be used by humans while the Saint-tier battle skills can only be practiced by humans. They're not suitable for the sea race, or the Tao family would have been able to become even more powerful with just the Saint-tier battle skills." Jianshen agreed with what Qing Yishuan had said. If Tao Jingtian had grasped a Saint-tier battle skill with his strength, he would have been able to take on Saint Kings at great perfection. And once he possessed a battle prowess like that, the Tao family's fate would not have ended as miserably as it did. Unfortunately, the Saint Emperor that had appeared in their clan did not create any Saint-tier battle skills himself. Saint-tier battle skills were a heavenly might. Not only did a person require supreme talent and remarkable abilities of comprehensions to come up with a Saint-tier battle skill, but they also needed to conform with the world on a certain level. Only with these special circumstances would they be able to come up with a Saint-tier battle skill. In the history of the Tianyuan continent, there were a few experts who had only just reached Saint King and had managed to come up with shockingly powerful Saint-tier battle skills under special circumstances. At the same time, there were some people with almost unprecedented talent who never came up with a single one even after becoming a peak Saint Emperor. Qin Yishuan turned to Jian Chen and said, Jian Chen, do you still remember how the Tao family just happened to be in possession of what I needed? The items are right in front of me, so I hope you will not get in my way. Qin Yishuan's eyes were filled with desire and urgency. If Jian Chen was only as powerful as before, Qin Yishuan never would have said those words, but she required Jian Chen's agreement now. You need an emperor armament? Jian Chen looked at Qin Yishuan. If he had known earlier than the item Qin Yishuan needed was an emperor armament, he would have given her the emperor armament he owned back at the Turtle Clan. It was completely useless to him now that he had reached the fourth layer of the chaotic body and comprehended the first realm of sword origin. The weapon was unable to withstand his power now. Qin Yishuan nodded before staring at one of the Saint-Tier battle skills for a while. She said, I also want a Saint-Tier battle skill. You can have everything other than those two items. Jian Chen thought about it a little and replied, you can have the emperor armament, but the Saint-Tier battle skill is very important to me as well. I can only lend it to you, so return it to me after you've comprehended it. Alright, deal. Qin Yishuan agreed in an extremely straightforward fashion before taking the sword-shaped emperor armament and one of the Saint-Tier battle skill tablets. Jian Chen continued to look through the treasury. There were a lot of items that had been accumulated over the years, and they were invaluable, but they were no different than soil in Jian Chen's eyes. He could not be bothered to look through them. In reality, even the pile of divine quality crystal coins did not catch Jian Chen's attention either. In the end, Jian Chen arrived before the bookshelf made of rare metal. He found that a third of the books there were cultivation methods and the experiences and comprehensions of saint emperors. Not only were there ones that belonged to the sea race, but there were also ones that belonged to humans and magical beasts as well. A small portion of the remaining books were heaven-tier battle skills created by humans, while the remaining books detailed various wondrous items in the world as well as ancient records regarding the history of the sea race. Jian Chen pulled out an ancient piece of beast leather from an inconspicuous part of the bookshelf. He unrolled it and found that the leather was a meter long and wide and was covered with extremely complicated and detailed inscribings of a formation, which seemed to contain another world. Jian Chen had almost been drawn away by it even with his powerful soul. What's this? Jian Chen was surprised and immediately became stern. He could already tell that the beast leather was not as simple as it seemed. This is a teleportation formation, and a high-level teleportation formation. It can be used to move between worlds. That's weird. Such a high-level teleportation formation only appears in higher worlds, so how has it ended up here? Zi Ying's voice rang through Jian Chen's head filled with surprise. This piece of beast leather originates from a higher world as well. It's extremely tough and should have come from a beast that's reached godhood at the very least. Even saint emperors cannot destroy it. Master, this teleportation formation will be of great use to you, so you must store it away well, said Qing Suo. With that, Jian Chen immediately pulled out an embroidered box and properly stored the teleportation formation in the box. Suddenly, Ziying produced an interjection of surprise. He stared at a corner of the treasury in interest and said, Master, go over there. There's something very impressive there. Jian Chen was surprised as disbelief slightly filled his face. The Azulate sword spirits possessed an extremely incredible insight, so barely anything would catch their eye, but they had actually described something as very impressive, which shocked him very much. Jian Chen immediately hurried over to the location Ziying specified without any hesitation. He then dug out a piece of armor from a large pile of valuable treasures by following Ziying's instructions. The piece of armor was pitch black and made from an unknown material. It was as light as a feather, as if it did not possess any weight at all. However, it was extremely damaged and not in perfect condition. Ziying, Qing Suo, what's so fantastic about this piece of armor? Jian Chen asked out of curiosity. He examined the piece of armor in his hands and failed to discover anything out of the ordinary other than the special material it was made of. Master, this is a piece of divine armor. It's a god artifact even greater than immortal artifacts. At the same time, the grade of the armor is impressive as well. I estimate that the owner of the armor was a chaotic prime at the very least, possibly even a grand prime. It's just that the armor is far too heavily damaged where it's almost completely ruined, Ziying said in pity. Jian Shen was shocked and the hand he was using to hold the piece of armor began to tremble slightly. He stared at the armor in disbelief as his heart churned. This was actually a piece of armor that had very likely been worn by a Grand Prime. Grand Primes were peak existences in higher worlds, so the armor they wore would definitely be a great treasure. Right now, he had actually come across such a treasure here. Even though it was damaged, it still left Jian Shen flabbergasted. In my opinion, the expert from the higher world was probably embroiled in a great battle and became heavily injured. In the end, he fell into a spatial crack and descended here by luck, which was how this armor was obtained by the people of the Tao family in the end. Qing Sua analyzed the likelihood. Chapter 1340, The Sea of Despair. This piece of divine armor has already been reduced to something like this. Can it still be used? Jian Shen asked. He found the situation rather regretful since the power of the armor was evident, but it was just far too damaged. From the looks of it, the divine armor isn't really useful anymore. Its inscriptions are damaged and the artifact spirit has dispersed. Other than the fact that the material it's made of is very tough, it cannot protect the wearer from anything. However, keep it with you, master. Once your strength increases in the future, you can look for some materials to repair it. It may not be able to recover its perfect shape, but it'll be useful for master, said Ziying. Don't be too disappointed, master. With your current strength, obtaining this damaged piece of armor is better than obtaining it in perfect condition because every god artifact has extremely high requirements before it can be used. Only those who have become immortal monarchs can begin to forge, and they cannot exceed an ordinary tier at most. Anything beyond that will require immortal emperors or even immortal exalts, said Ziying. Afterward, he looked at the damaged piece of armor in Jian Shen's hand and continued, this should be a high-quality god artifact or even a supreme-quality god artifact, which is why it would be useless to you if it was in perfect condition. Having it damaged is more useful to you. Ziying nodded in agreement. Qing Sua is right. If this armor was in perfect condition, master would not be able to use it even if it was just a low-quality god artifact. However, once it is repaired, its quality will fall and possibly descend to the level of immortal artifacts. Once master breaks through another layer of the chaotic body, then master will be able to use it. Jian Shen beamed with joy with that. He said, Ziying, Qing Sua, don't you have a method to repair this god artifact, even if it makes its quality fall? We do have an idea, but we need a few materials. Fortunately, we don't need to repair the armor completely, so the materials we need aren't too high of a grade. We should be able to find them on the Tianyuan continent, responded Ziying. Jian Shen immediately became excited. He was rather eager to get the armor fixed because he would have a great trump card when he moved on to the Saint's world. Although the defenses of his chaotic body were impressive, he did not mind wearing some powerful armor as well. The treasury of the Tao family had brought Jian Shen unexpected joy. Not only had he found a large amount of cultivation resources and 2 saint-tier battle skills, but he had also come across 2 treasures that were useful to him, which definitely caught him by surprise. Jian Shen cleaned out the treasury of the Tao family. He split all the items into 2 portions, one for the Turtle Clan and the other for the Flame Mercenaries. When Jian Shen and Qing Yishuan left the treasury, only half a day had passed since they had entered. Qing Yishuan looked at Jian Shen outside the treasury with somewhat mixed emotions and said, Jian Shen, I will be bidding farewell to you here. I will be leaving the Sea Realm soon. I will return the Saint-Tier battle skill to a place you suggest after I comprehend it. Jian Shen stared at her calmly and asked, do you have some powerful enemies on the Tianyuan continent? I feel like you came to the Sea Realm for refuge. Qing Yishuan nodded rather forcefully and said, to be honest, I offended a powerful organization on the Tianyuan continent and was pursued by them when I was just a saint ruler. With no other choice, I hid in the Sea Realm. Since you're still not bold enough to return to the Tianyuan continent with your strength right now, the organization you've probably offended is either an ancient clan or a protector clan. Seeing how much you have helped the turtle clan, I'll help you out. Jian-Shen pulled out a jade box from his space ring and said, "There's an immortal peach in there. It's far more valuable than any heavenly resource you know of. Once you ingest it, your strength will reach great perfection in an extremely short amount of time, or you might even become a Saint Emperor." The box carried a violet cloud peach of the first grade. It could increase the eater's cultivation by 500 years. The 500 years were calculated from the perspective of the immortal's world, so in a lower world, it was enough to overcome 1,000 years of cultivation or even more. Jian-Shen and Qing Yishuan went their separate ways. She left by herself after accepting the peach from Jian-Shen, but she was suspicious of what Jian-Shen had said, how a single peach could elevate her to great perfection in such a short amount of time. She did not believe it, because it sounded far too preposterous. Jian-Shen did not stick around for long either. He made his way back to the Turtle Clan. There were more and more people visiting the Turtle Clan now. All of them were people who held authority in large clans, and almost all of them were Saint Kings. Almost all the large clans in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall had sent people, and some people from the large clans even came from the territory of the other two halls. Without a single exception, they had come to see the ruler of the Turtle Clan. Of course, that obviously did not happen. They only saw the elders of the clan. Although some of them felt extremely dissatisfied over the fact that they had to speak with a group of saint rulers with their status as Saint Kings, none of them dared to express their dissatisfaction because a tremendous presence warned them at all times that a Saint Emperor was paying attention to the whole interaction. Jian-Shen did not show himself. He returned silently to his own room and, other than Tai Ta, no one discovered him. 3 days later, Jian-Shen and Yadrium appeared in a desolate region in the sea realm. The energy of the world in the region around them was extremely thin to the point where it was impossible for people to cultivate here. Before them was a parched land that extended into thick mist. The mist was very odd. Jian-Shen was not able to see through it even with his strength, and even his soul was obstructed, unable to reach into the mist. Up ahead is the Sea of Despair, one of the most well-known zones of danger in the sea realm. Its dangers are even greater than the divine realm because even emperors have the chance of dying once they step into it. In ancient times, many emperors fell here and some of their corpses even disappeared, Yadrium said heavy-heartedly. She bathed in blue light so her face was obscured, but it could be imagined just how stern she was. Even with her great strength, where she barely had any opponents among all the saint emperors currently present, she was not completely confident she could return safely once she set foot in there. "Are there emperor-level beasts in the Sea of Despair?" Jian-Shen asked in surprise. "No, there are no beasts in the Sea of Despair." Before Yadrium could reply, a familiar voice rang out. The sea goddess' blurry figure hovered before the two of them. Chapter 1341, Vicious Spirits of the Mist. 1. I greet your majesty. Yadrium dismissed her prideful attitude once the sea goddess arrived and politely bowed to her. Her voice carried respect from the bottom of her heart. I greet your majesty. Jian-Shen clasped his hands at the sea goddess as well. There may not be any beasts in the Sea of Despair, but the dangers in there are, without a doubt, the most dangerous in the sea realm. Let alone saint emperors, even I had to be careful when I stepped in their back when I was at my peak. The dangers of the Sea of Despair greatly exceed your imaginations. The sea goddess did not bother too much with courtesies. She explained the details of the Sea of Despair to the two of them. Probably no one in the sea realm even possessed a tenth of the sea goddess knowledge with regards to the Sea of Despair. Both Jian-Shen and Yadrium were shocked by what they heard. Just what type of place was the Sea of Despair if even the sea goddess needed to be careful when she set foot in there when she was at her peak? The dangers there were actually terrifying enough to endanger Origin Realm experts. The sea goddess continued, the mist of the Sea of Despair is thick and never disperses. It remains like this all year round. The mist is no ordinary mist either but an extremely weird energy. It can silently invade your body and eat away at your life force, so you will be under the constant invasion of the mist once you set foot in there. Other than that, there are many vicious spirits that have been born in the mist. They are very difficult to deal with, and some powerful vicious spirits can even slay saint emperors. Fortunately, there are not a lot of spirits that are that powerful, so the chances of coming across one that's strong is very small. However, you need to take every single step with care and remain vigilant once you enter. Other than that, there are two things you should keep in mind. The space in the Sea of Despair is very unstable, so spatial distortions happen often, making it very easy to become disorientated. You just need to follow the abyssal crystal to find the right path. The second thing is that once you enter regions where the mist thins, retreat as quickly as possible. Do not stay there any longer than you need because they are forbidden regions. The sea goddess became extremely stern when she reached the second point. She was extremely fearful of places like that. Jianchen shivered. He found it rather unbelievable that even the sea goddess, who was an origin realm expert, found it so terrifying. After all, she had surpassed Saint Emperor and, according to the sword spirits, was an immortal. I've said all I need to say. Once you enter the Sea of Despair, I won't be able to provide any support to you at all. It will all depend on the two of you inside. Do remember that as soon as you come across any spatial distortions, move together and do not separate from each other. There is only one abyssal crystal, the sea goddess warned at the very end before watching Jianchen and Yadrium enter the Sea of Despair. They soon disappeared in the rolling mists. Only when the two of them had completely disappeared did the sea goddess sigh. For my return, I have to get the two of them to risk their lives to search for my divine hall. Aren't I a little too selfish? I hope they return safely. Jianchen felt like he had been engulfed by an extremely thick mist as soon as he entered the Sea of Despair. It became hazy white all around him, and even with his vision, he was only able to see 100 meters away. The senses of his soul had become completely useless in the mist as well. The mist there was very abnormal. It was formed from an odd energy and maintained a certain density. Jianchen was surrounded by the mist but felt like he was in soft cotton instead. The cotton constantly pressed against his body before turning into thin strands of energy in an attempt to seep into his body. Jianchen had learned from the sea goddess that the weird mist could devour his life force, so he dared not to be careless at all. Chaotic force immediately flowed through his body and filled every inch of him to stop the invading mist. By his side, Yadrium was enveloped by a layer of powerful water-attributed energy that stopped the invasion of the mist as well. She then removed the abyssal crystal from her space ring with a flip of her hand. The palm-sized crystal let out a gentle glow as it hovered in the air, changing with Yadrium's hand seals. The energy inside immediately began to leak out, gradually condensing into a small, blue bird. The abyssal bird was only the size of a fist. It flapped its wings and flew off into the distance as a blue streak of light. It moved very quickly, disappearing from Jianchen and Yadrium's line of sight in the blink of an eye. The abyssal bird will take us to find the sea goddess divine hall. Let's go, the sea goddess called at Jianchen before running off in the direction of the abyssal bird. Yadrium possessed a mental connection with the bird, so even after it had vanished from her vision, she could still discern where the bird was. Not only was the space of the Sea of Despair very unstable, it was weird as well. Jianchen and Yadrium came across many weird regions of space that pulsed rhythmically like a person's heart, as if they possessed life. They were filled with a malevolent feeling. Jianchen and Yadrium advanced along the route of the bird. They constantly changed directions along the way and even had to backtrack along the path they had come from a few times. The space in the Sea of Despair was distorted, making it seem like they had to backtrack many times, but they had actually maintained a straight path without any deviations. Suddenly, the space beside Jianchen shook. A ripple of space expanded toward Jianchen with lightning-like speed before striking his left arm. Silently, the clothes on Jianchen left arm ripped open and a crack appeared. His arm was injured and bright red blood seeped out. Jianchen glanced at the wound on his arm and secretly felt shocked. His fourth-layer chaotic body had actually been injured so easily. If any other Saint King tried to withstand the strike, they probably would have been ripped into two by the spatial ripple. This place really is dangerous. The dangers here are incomparable to the divine realm, Jian Chen thought, and became even more vigilant. Jian Chen and Yedrium continued on. They had no sense of time in the Sea of Despair, so they had no idea how long they had traveled for either. In the end, the abyssal bird had disappeared twice because it had ran out of energy. It was already the third time that Yadrium had used her secret technique to summon it. They were getting closer and closer to the depths of the Sea of Despair now, but Jian Chen seemed to be in a rather horrible shape. His clothes were ripped all over and covered with bloody marks, clearly having been injured multiple times. These had all been caused by the ripples of space that would randomly appeared. Yadrium was no exception either. She had sustained some light injuries as well, but her body was surrounded by a layer of energy to fend off the invasion of the mist. As a result, it was impossible to see her face. A few specks of light silently made their way toward Jian Chen and Yadrium from behind. The faint lights pulsed, dim and bright, fusing perfectly with the mist in the surroundings. They seemed like sets of ghosts' eyes. Even though the two of them moved very quickly, the specks of light remained behind them. They were not shaken off and did not seem much different from the mist in the surroundings. They were obscured and gave off no presence at all, so they did not catch Jian Chen or Yedrium's attention at all. Chapter 1342, Vicious Spirits of the Mist, 2. There were only a few pairs of eyes in the beginning before increasing to over 10. They followed close behind Jian Chen and Yadrium and very quickly, remaining silent throughout their journey. When the pairs of eyes reached over 20 in number, they could no longer resist and attacked Jian Chen and Yadrium. Over 20 thick, hazy tendrils quickly stabbed toward Jian Chen and Yadrium's heads. They seemed to be completely condensed from mist and seemed to be a part of the surroundings, making it impossible to discover their existence without a close observation of one's surroundings. Jian Chen and Yadrium were alerted the moment the pairs of eyes began to attack the two of them. Without even looking back, Jian Chen condensed a silver-white sword chi on his arm and swung it back, sending a scattering of powerful sword chi. The tendrils immediately dispersed when they clashed with the sword chi, while the sword chi continued on toward the eyes without weakening at all. A sharp cry immediately rang out from behind. The sword chi had landed on the mist, and a few blurry figures began to flicker inside before dispersing. The figures varied from each other. There were human-shaped ones, beast-shaped ones, and even oddly shaped ones. Every single one of the figures represented a pair of eyes. Several of the eyes immediately dispersed. At the same time, a pulse of surging energy appeared. Yedrium struck out as well. A trident of energy had already condensed in her hand, and she threw it like a javelin. The trident split into 2, then 4, and then 8, quickly shooting toward the eyes behind them. The 8 tridents seemed to weave together as the powerful energy pulses they gave off caused the mist in the surroundings to violently churn. They easily tore through the tendrils before viciously striking the eyes. Every single trident possessed deadly precision, each striking a blurry figure in the mist, which was then followed by an ear-piercing howl. The figures that had been struck immediately dispersed. The eyes seemed to possess a certain level of intelligence. After losing around a dozen companions, they seemed to have understood Jian Chen and Yadrium's strength. Without any hesitation, they quickly retreated and vanished into the endless mist. Jian Chen and Yadrium glared in the direction the eyes had disappeared. They frowned, and after a while of thought, Jian Chen said, "What weird things. Not only can they move silently, but they also don't give off any presence either. I actually failed to sense that there was anything following us. If I hadn't sensed their sudden attacks, we probably would have been in trouble before we even knew about it. Those must be the vicious spirits mentioned by Her Majesty. They came into existence from the mist. They're quite hard to deal with, but fortunately they aren't powerful, which was why we managed to repel them so easily. We have to be careful with our every step in the future. If we come across any Emperor-level spirits, they'll be hard to deal with even if we work together," said Yadrium. She was rather stern. Jian Shen nodded quietly. Although he possessed the battle prowess of a Saint Emperor right now, he was still not the real deal. Saint Emperors could fall here, and even Origin Realm experts needed to move carefully, so he needed to be prepared and remain vigilant at all times. Yadrium had lost the connection with the abyssal bird again. She pulled out the abyssal crystal and used a secret technique to summon the abyssal bird using the energy within the crystal so that they could continue on their way. As they moved, Jian Shen and Yadrium constantly encountered sneak attacks from the spirits in the mist, but under their vigilance, they were discovered beforehand and wiped out with lightning-like speed. However, as they rapidly traveled further into the Sea of Despair, the vicious spirits they came across constantly grew stronger. They now faced Saint King-level spirits and would even encounter some at great perfection. They had no idea how many spirits there were in the mist. Jian Shen and Yadrium had already wiped out several thousand, but the number of them did not seem to decrease at all. They also had to adjust their paths constantly due to the distortions of space. Along the way, they were ambushed by over 10 vicious spirits at great perfection. The spirits were unable to harm the body. Their attacks only affected the soul, so they suffered. However, Jian Shen was no ordinary person while Yadrium possessed supreme strength, so the soul attacks did not affect them too much. Suddenly, an ear-piercing scream rang out from ahead. It was extraordinarily unpleasant, containing an attack on the soul. Jian Shen and Yadrium stopped simultaneously. They sternly stared ahead and remained on guard. Their souls actually wavered slightly because of the scream. Be careful. There should be an extremely powerful vicious spirit up ahead, at the level of emperors, Yadrium said in heavy voice, as if she was about to face a great enemy. Even the sea goddess had said that they were difficult to deal with, so they could not afford to be careless. Jian Shen became stern as well. He looked around his surroundings and said, "Should we take a detour?" As soon as Jian Shen finished speaking, the mist up ahead began to churn violently. A white figure gradually appeared before the two of them. It seemed to be completely composed of mist. It was a human-shaped vicious spirit with a long tail. It did not possess facial features, only a pair of extremely bright but foul eyes. With the appearance of the vicious spirit, many more eyes appeared one after another in the surroundings. There were several dozen pairs of them. The two of them had been completely surrounded by a group of spirits. Every single one of them was very powerful, the weakest being a Saint King. "Looks like we can't make it away anymore," Jian Shen said rather regretfully. He knew that this battle was now unavoidable. "I'll go keep the Emperor-level vicious spirit busy. You deal with the others," Yadrium said heavily before decisively moving out. She charged at the Emperor-level spirit and began to engage in a great battle with her trident. The vicious spirit seemed to possess a tangible body. When it clashed with Yadrium the first time, it actually produced a powerful pulse of energy that caused the surrounding mist to churn violently. Yadrium shivered inside. She did not gain the upper hand at all from the first clash. She was only on equal ground. However, the vicious spirits did not specialize in open battle but in targeting the souls of people. Open battles were their weaknesses. Yadrium was filled with an unpleasant feeling since their strength was equal in an open clash. She dared not hold back any longer, attacking the vengeful spirit with all she had. On the other side, Jian Shen began to fight with the surrounding spirits as well. A powerful sword chi was condensed in his right hand as he flickered through the mist with the illusory flash, dispersing the spirits one by one. Since the disparity of strength was just far too great, coupled with the fact that Jian Shen's sword chi was condensed from laws, the spirits were helpless against him. They immediately vanished once they were stabbed by the sword chi. Seeing how its subordinates were being culled by Jian Shen, the Emperor-level spirit seemed to have become furious. It produced an ear-piercing screech and the surrounding spirits all began to charge at Jian Shen as if they had just received some order. Jian Shen dispersed the spirits in a single stroke before dodging by using the illusory flash. However, the spirits were born from the mist, so they were in their natural environment. Thus, they were no slower than Jian Shen, surrounding him once again in the blink of an eye before boldly charging at him. Jian Chen pushed the defense of his chaotic body to its limit and a white glow covered him as well. He was protecting himself with laws. Chapter 1343, Weapon of the Sea Goddess. The vicious spirits charged at Jian Chen's light barrier, but when they came in contact with the glow, they all produced hissing sizzles, like grease in a fire pit. Although Jian Chen's glow was similar to the barriers condensed from energy by other fighters, it possessed quite a powerful offensive ability as well. When the vengeful spirits collided with the light, their figures rapidly dimmed before dispersing soon after. Jian Chen's layer of protection dimmed slightly after successfully blocking the spirits since their attacks were on the level of Saint King's. The spirits in the surroundings charged endlessly toward Jian Chen. They had no regard for life or death at all. In that moment, they seemed to have become fearless, cold-blooded warriors. Finally, Jian Chen's layer of protection shattered after dispersing over 10 vengeful spirits. The remaining spirits turned into something akin to a flood as they surged toward Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen seemed to understand their intentions as his lips curled into an odd smile. He did not resist at all, allowing the spirits to enter his sea of consciousness. Although Yedrium was engaged in an intense battle with the Emperor-level spirit, she always paid attention to Jian Chen's situation. Seeing all the spirits enter Jian Chen's head, she could not help but panic. The spirits were most skilled at attacking the souls of people, which was one of the hardest things to guard against. Injuries of the soul were far more severe than injuries of the body. Even Saint Emperors would not be able to ward off so many attacks from Saint King vicious spirits, let alone Jian Chen, who only possessed the battle prowess of a Saint Emperor. There was even a chance that they would die. Unfortunately, she needed to keep her opponent busy and was unable to break free. At the same time, the spirits had already entered Jian Chen's head. It was too late even if she wanted to assist him. Yedrium paid close attention to Jian Chen's situation as she fought against the Emperor-level spirit. Some worry and anxiety appeared in her eyes. She did not wish to see Jian Chen die here. Spurt. Yedrium was injured by the spirit under her carelessness. She vomited a mouthful of blood and was blown away. Her opponent immediately pursued her. The spirit's body became intangible again, dissolving into a ball of mist as it hovered over. It formed a cage around Yedrium. Blue light shone bright within the white cage as terrifying ripples of energy pulsed in the surroundings. Yedrium had dismissed her thoughts and struck out with all her strength, engaging in an intense battle with the spirit cage. Behind her, an avatar that seemed like a fishman condensed. It possessed a surging presence. Every single strike from her seemed destructive. Yedrium was injured, but she was still very powerful. The cage shook violently. A part of the spirit engaged in a devastating battle with her inside the cage. Jian Chen remained in the same spot without moving at all as several dozen spirits entered his head. He seemed like a statue. However, this did not last too long. Jian Chen opened his eyes a few seconds later. The light in his eyes shone with interest as he glared at the Emperor-level spirit's cage. He then sent a powerful sword chi in that direction. Boom! The cage of mist around Yedrium was already showing signs of collapsing from her attacks, so it immediately erupted in a violent fashion with Jian Chen's attack. Discovering that Jian Chen was fine, Yedrium immediately let out a sigh of relief before focusing on her battle against the spirit. Yedrium's opponent possessed a certain level of intelligence. Seeing how Jian Chen was perfectly fine, it was clearly dumbstruck and in some disbelief. Jian Chen used the illusory flash and charged toward the spirit as a blur. A 2-meter-long sword chi had already condensed in his hand, which he used to stab at the spirit along with a dazzling, white light. The sword chi pierced the spirit and produced hissing sounds. A fist-sized hole was rapidly dissolved away by the sword chi. Yedrium's eyes narrowed at the sight of this. She was secretly shocked. Jian Chen's threat against the spirits was actually even greater than her own. Just what is the energy that Jian Chen uses? It seems to be at the same level as the power of emperors, but it also seems to be at a far greater level, Yedrium thought. The Emperor-level spirit gradually fell to a disadvantage against Jian Chen and Yedrium's teamwork. It became even more illusory, mostly due to the attacks from Jian Chen. After all, Jian Chen's sword qi was a condensation of laws. It was far more harmful to the spirit than Yedrium. Suddenly, the spirit turned into mist and split into two. Those two pieces pierced toward Jian Chen and Yedrium's foreheads at the same time, like swords. Jian Chen's protective glow was unable to stop the spirit at the level of emperors. It entered his head in the end. Yedrium was not fortunate enough to avoid it either. The spirit managed to attack her soul. The emperor-level spirit materialized into a terrifying white devil in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. However, before it could devour his soul, an azure and violet light enveloped the demon. The landscape of the sea of consciousness underwent a drastic change. A vast starry sky appeared where countless corpses of immortals littered the space. Golden blood hovered among the stars, radiating with a terrifying pressure and energy pulses. The white devil began to violently tremble as fear filled its eyes. Afterward, it screamed and immediately fled. It hurried away at a speed many times faster than when it had come in, leaving Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. At the same time, the center of Yedrium's eyebrows erupted with a dazzling blue light. A blue imprint of a trident suddenly appeared, and it left her face and rapidly expanded, turning into a 3-meter-long trident that hovered over her. It gave off a layer of blue light, which enveloped her. This was a weapon of true power. It pulsed in a terrifying fashion. The presence was actually countless times more powerful than Emperor armaments. The spirit was forced out by the weapon and rapidly fused with its other half before glancing at Jian Chen with lingering fear. Afterward, it turned and fled without staying any longer. Yedrium just happened to catch the fear the spirit had looked at Jian Chen with. She was clearly stunned, as if she did not believe what she had just seen. She then glanced at Jian Chen and sank into her thoughts. Jian Chen stared in the direction the spirit had fled in for a while before looking at Yedrium. He became fixated on the trident above her head while his face was filled with surprise. He said, "Hall Master, is that an Emperor armament? Why do I feel that it's even more powerful than the ancestral weapons of the 10 Protector clans?" The trident rapidly shrank with a blurry glow, returning to its original imprint-like shape and embedding itself in Yedrium's forehead again where it rapidly vanished. Yedrium thought about how to respond silently before saying, "This isn't an Emperor armament. It's the weapon that Her Majesty once used in the past." "Is that so? No wonder the weapon's so powerful." Jian Chen understood. Obviously, the weapon of an Origin Realm expert could not be compared to Emperor armaments in terms of power. Chapter 1344, The Inata Tower. Although I am in possession of Her Majesty's weapon, I cannot use it whenever I want. I can only use it if I am in a situation where my life is threatened, Yedrium added. Her gaze toward Jian Chen was filled with curiosity. She had to use the sea goddess weapon to drive off the vicious spirit, so she was very curious what Jian Chen had used to do the same thing. No wonder he can emerge unscathed after so many spirits had attacked his soul. Even Emperor-level spirits are unable to do anything to him and end up reacting with fear. Jian Chen must be in possession of something impressive. Yedrium thought, but she did not ask Jian Chen about it. Every single person possessed their secrets. The next part of the journey was relatively peaceful. Although they came across a few dangers from time to time, the number of vicious spirits that attacked them drastically decreased. Suddenly, the surrounding mist began to grow thin. Their range of visibility extended to over 10,000 meters from just 100 meters before. The region of space there was very stable, where even a battle between Saint Emperors would fail to cause it to ripple. "Stop!" Yedrium cried out and immediately stopped with Jian Chen. Both of them became very stern because they had remembered a warning the sea goddess had gave them. They had to avoid regions where the mist thinned because they were forbidden. "We've entered a forbidden zone. Retreat," Yedrium said heavily, but before she could finish what she was saying, a terrifying killing intent filled the surroundings and enveloped the two of them. They immediately felt like they had plunged into the waters of the Arctic, where it was bone-chillingly cold. The killing intent was just far too powerful, at a level where it was just shocking. Even with their strength, Yadrium and Jianchen felt like they had been immobilized by the killing intent, as if they had been frozen there. Both of them were stupefied. The Forbidden Zone was even more terrifying than they had imagined. Just the killing intent had reached such horrendously powerful levels. Jianchen and Yadrium looked to a spot over 10 kilometers away. At that spot, there was an abnormal ball of flickering red light. There were marks of bright red blood on the ground that had still not dried. The terrifying killing intent in the surroundings originated from the red light. What is that? Jianchen and Yadrium became fixated on the ball of red light. They were shocked by it. Was it a treasure or was it something dangerous? Master, that's the organs of an expert. Suddenly the sword spirit's voices rang out in Jianchen's head. What? Jianchen was stunned. He stared at the ball of red light in disbelief. He was shocked by how powerful the presence of the organs were, enough to directly kill a Saint Emperor. Ziying, Qingsuo, what level of strength did this expert possess? Jianchen asked. This expert should have been an immortal emperor, but they're not from the immortals' world. They're an expert of the saints' world. The mist here is far more complicated than it seems as well. It's filled with a presence of death. Once it invades the bodies of people, there is a chance that they will die. This is no simple place, Ziying said. Jianchen stared at the abnormal red ball of light from 10 kilometers away. He then used all he had to retreat step by step with Yadrium against the invasion of the killing intent and under the great pressure. Fortunately, the killing intent only originated from the organs of a supreme expert and did not possess any active offensive capabilities. At the same time, Jianchen and Yadrium were very far away, which was why they were able to endure the pressure despite the difficulty, and retreat safely. The killing intent disappeared when the surrounding mist thickened. However, what they had just witnessed before became permanently imprinted in their heads. What was that? I had a very powerful feeling that if I got too close, would not have been able to leave, Yadrium said with lingering fear. The red light from before was even more terrifying than the emperor-level vicious spirit. Jianchen shook his head and pretended he had no idea. Yadrium and Jianchen continued on their way, but they slowed down a lot. Even though they slowed down, they still ended up trespassing in a few forbidden zones even. It was the same with all of them. Every forbidden region possessed the remains of a supreme expert that radiated with killing intent. The blood never dried, seeming to be demonic. Jianchen had learned from the sword spirits that the remains all originated from the same expert and had been there for countless years. The essence within them would never disperse and could easily kill Saint Emperors. Fortunately, Jianchen and Yadrium managed to stop in time whenever they trespassed in one of those regions. They then managed to retreat as quickly as possible every time. This was the only reason why they were perfectly fine right now. Suddenly, the surrounding space began to violently pulse. The surrounding landscape became blurry and Jianchen discovered that Yadrium was rapidly fading away. Oh no, space has fallen into disorder again, Jianchen shivered inside. He had encountered similar situations many times already. The space within the Sea of Despair was very unstable and every time it fell into disorder, it would randomly transport them to another point in the Sea of Despair. However, this time was different than all the times before. He had always been with Yadrium before and had been sent to the same place every time. He saw Yadrium grow blurry this time. This was a sign that they were about to be transported to different places. Jianchen did not have enough time to think through everything. He immediately grabbed Yadrium by the hand and yanked her over. They relied on the abyssal crystal to guide them through the Sea of Despair and the crystal was with Yadrium. If he ended up separating with her, he would become completely lost since visibility was limited to 100 meters away. He might even end up trapped here forever. Yadrium's hand was slender and gentle. It was as smooth as jade and carried a certain coolness. However, Jianchen was in no mood to consider her features. As soon as he pulled Yadrium over, the surrounding space descended into chaos as it pulsed in an extremely unstable manner. The light around Yadrium rippled slightly, but it stabilized very soon. She drew her hand back from Jian Chen without raising a scene. Her heart, which was usually impervious to any desires, wavered slightly. It was no longer as calm as before. There had not been a man who had touched her in her life. The space stabilized and the two of them recovered their visibility as well. However, their faces became extremely ugly because they had appeared in a region without any mist. The area around them was completely clear. The surroundings were desolate as far as the eye could see, and only the sky remained a hazy white, having been enshrouded by the deadly mist. "Oh no, we've probably arrived in the most dangerous region of them all," Jian Chen said under his breath. The two of them had come across multiple regions like this along the way and had gained a rough understanding of them. The greater the danger, the thinner the mist would be. There was not any mist at all in this region. Yadrium also became heavy-hearted. She looked around and found that everything looked the same. Even if she wanted to back out of this place, she would not know where to go. Jian Chen looked around as well, but to his surprise, he failed to find the flesh or blood of the supreme expert. After a moment of silence, Yadrium pulled out the abyssal crystal in a straightforward manner and summoned the abyssal bird to lead the way. The two of them set off by following the bird, but this time, they moved extremely slowly and carefully. After traveling several dozen kilometers, a gigantic, ancient tower appeared before the two of them. The tower was several hundred meters tall and in horrible condition. It was covered with slashes from a sword, and every single slash seemed to be hiding an extremely powerful sword that radiated a terrifying sword chi. Chapter 1345. The Inata Grand Prime. Jian Chen's eyes immediately narrowed the moment he caught sight of the slashes on the ancient tower. He could sense a very powerful comprehension of the way of the sword from them. It was extremely profound, greatly exceeding anything he knew. Jian Chen sensed a whole different, boundless world from them. The slashes were unbelievably powerful. Jian Chen became fixated on the densely packed slashes on the tower. He slowly closed his eyes and attempted to comprehend the way of the sword left behind on the tower. He also walked the way of the sword, except he had only touched the very basics. The comprehension of the way of the sword within the slashes was very intense. If Jian Chen could comprehend even just a little, he felt like his understanding of the way of the sword would skyrocket and his strength would increase. Jian Chen gradually focused his attention on the slashes, but as soon as his mind came in contact with them, his body violently jolted. He immediately paled while blood spurted into the air from his mouth as if he had become heavily injured. He staggered back. The comprehension of the way of the sword hidden within the slashes was just too powerful, far beyond anything that Jian Chen could even touch upon. Not only did Jian Chen fail to comprehend anything as he had wished, but he had also been injured by the slashes. "This is the Inata Tower. Master, you must never try to comprehend the slashes on the tower. These slashes were left behind by the most powerful expert of the Immortals world, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. They're filled with a sharp killing intent, and even sword immortals can be heavily injured by them." Ziying's voice rang out in his head. What? The slashes were left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt? Jian Chen was completely stunned when he heard that. He knew exactly who the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was. He was the strongest expert of the Immortals world both in name and reality. Although he remained as an Immortal Exalt, his strength had already surpassed Immortal Exalt in a certain sense. He was even more powerful than the former master of the sword spirits. Jian Chen felt extremely astounded when he learned that slashes from the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt were in the sea of despair. Ziying sank into his memories and mumbled, "This ancient tower is known as the Inata Tower. It's the fated god artifact of the Inata Grand Prime who stood at the peak of the saints' world. The Inata Grand Prime was powerful enough to be ranked within the top 3 in terms of strength in the saints' world, where only the Grand Prime of the warring gods possessed the downright ability to defeat her. In the war back then, the Nirvanic immortal exalt of our immortal's world was embroiled in a devastating battle against the Inata Grand Prime in the void of space. In the end, the Inata Grand Prime fled with heavy injuries and her whereabouts became unknown. I never thought that the Inata Grand Prime had fallen in the end, and his fated artifact would end up here. Jianshen asked again after his thoughts clicked. Does that mean that the damaged piece of armor I obtained from the treasury of the Tao family belongs to the Inata Grand Prime? Master, I am uncertain about that. The Inata Grand Prime's most famed artifact was the Inata Tower. The tower is extremely powerful. It can devastate a whole region of the cosmos, refine almost everything in the world, or store away a whole section of the world. Even in our immortal's world, the artifact was renowned. We never paid attention to what armor the Inata Grand Prime wore, answered Ziying. Master, do you still remember the remains of the supreme expert you came across earlier? The remains should belong to an expert at the level of Immortal Emperor. The damaged armor might have come from him. However, the Inata Grand Prime has fallen and the Inata Tower has been heavily damaged by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. The tower should possess all the wealth the Grand Prime managed to accumulate throughout his life. Master, we can try and enter the tower, Qing Suo said with a clear voice. Jian Chen's heart immediately began to beat with excitement. He did not doubt that any item from the collection of a Grand Prime was enough to overshadow everything he had obtained from the Xianhuang microcosm. Jian Chen immediately began to walk toward the Inata Tower. He did not move quickly, taking every step cautiously, fearing that something might happen. What are you doing? You can tell with a single glance that the tower's not simple. It might even be more dangerous than anything we've come across. Yedrium could not help but warn him when she saw Jian Chen start walking toward the tower. This was because it was a very large region without any mist, which meant that the dangers here were far greater than any of the times before. Hall Master, have a break here. I'll go over there and have a look, Jian Chen said to Yadrium, because he believed the sword spirits. Yedrium watched Jian Chen grow further away. She gritted her teeth and followed along, but she was also very careful. She had already made up her mind to use the weapon of the sea goddess at any moment. Suddenly, the Inata Tower shone with a hazy, azure light when Jian Chen was over a dozen kilometers away. A terrifying pulse immediately expanded from the tower, causing the surroundings to tremble. Jian Chen and Yadrium revealed different expressions. They felt fear from the pulse as the very depths of their souls trembled. Oh no, the artifact spirit of the Inata Tower has not dispersed yet. Master, retreat, the sword spirit's voice rang through Jian Chen's head in a panic. Afterward, the sword spirits fell silent, hiding themselves well. They were heavily injured right now and did not possess their might from before. They were not the opponents of the artifact spirit in the tower. Retreat! Jian Chen cried out before falling back with Yadrium as quickly as they could. The Inata Tower gently trembled as the azure light grew brighter and brighter. The terrifying pulse affected the surroundings, causing the space around it to violently distort and the mist in the air to churn wildly. At the same time, the slashes on the tower began to shine with dazzling light. At that moment, all the slashes seemed to have roused. Every single slash seemed to transform, projecting a powerful, transparent sword that revolved around the tower. It began to suppress the structure. The Inata Tower was unable to overpower the slashes, so its glow gradually dimmed. In the end, it fell silent again. It stood there quietly just like any other dilapidated tower. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt and former Master were the two great sword gods of the Immortal's world, but the Nirvanic Sword Immortal's accomplishments in the way of the sword surpassed former Master. The slashes he's left on the Inata Tower are actually seals and every single slash has given birth to its own spirit, Ziying said emotionally as he observed the slashes on the tower from afar. The artifact spirit in the Inata Tower has not dispersed yet, but it's heavily injured just like us. At the same time, it's been suppressed by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt seal, preventing it from recovering. Master, once you reach the 7th layer of the chaotic body, you should be able to approach the Inata Tower, said Qing Suo. The 7th layer? Jian Chen became bitter inside. He had only just reached the fourth layer of the chaotic body, and breaking through would only become more difficult. It was not an easy feat to reach the seventh layer. Jian Chen and Yadrium began to travel in a direction opposite of the Inata Tower. They traversed several hundred kilometers by foot before finally leaving the forbidden region. Afterward, Yadrium summoned the abyssal bird and continued on their way after detouring around the region where the Inata Tower was. This part of the journey was much more peaceful. Jian Chen and Yadrium came across fewer and fewer forbidden regions, and the vicious spirits that attacked them gradually vanished. The only problem was the distortions of space they came across several times, which sent them to random locations in the Sea of Despair and forced them to travel much more than needed. A blue light finally appeared before them, less than 100 meters in the mist after walking for so long. A huge, majestic divine hall appeared before them. The entire structure shone with a resplendent blue light, which glimmered like crystal. The hall slowly drifted through the Sea of Despair. The divine hall was entirely constructed from abyssal crystal. Abyssal crystal was something that originated from the Sea of Despair, so the divine hall, which was completely constructed from it, could avoid a lot of the dangers present in the Sea of Despair. This is Her Majesty's divine hall. We've finally found it. Yadrium said with a trembling voice as she looked at the blue divine hall in excitement. Finally. Jian Chen smiled triumphantly. Chapter 1346, Sword Forging, 1. No one knew how large the Sea of Despair was. It had always been shrouded by mist even in ancient times. The sea goddess abyssal crystal divine hall floated aimlessly through the Sea of Despair. It moved at all times, making it impossible for anyone to find it, including Origin Realm experts. The only method was to use an abyssal crystal as a guide. Only then could someone find the correct location. Yadrium excitedly flew up the steep stairs as Jian Chen followed close behind her. They made their way to the front entrance step by step. The door of the divine hall was tightly closed and the entire structure hid an extremely powerful energy. Before this energy, even Jian Chen and Yadrium shivered. Yadrium took out the abyssal crystal and performed several hand seals. She used a secret technique to activate the energy within the abyssal crystal. A blue pillar of light appeared from the crystal, and under Yadrium's control, it formed an extremely profound inscription, which then struck the main entrance with lightning-like speed. Immediately, the door of the divine hall began to shine with a blue light. The powerful energy sleeping within seemed to have awakened, and with a series of creaks, the door slowly opened. Not only was the abyssal crystal the guide to finding the divine hall, but it was also the key to the divine hall as well. However, a corresponding secret technique was needed. An icy desolate presence immediately began to radiate out of the divine hall, causing Jian Chen and Yadrium to shiver inside. They felt like they had arrived in the ancient times. The divine hall had drifted through the Sea of Despair for several hundreds of thousands of years, even reaching over 1,000,000. It had never been opened the entire time it had drifted, so the residual presence inside was extremely ancient. The divine hall was empty and silent. An invisible pressure permeated the entire building. The door closed automatically after Jian Chen and Yadrium entered the divine hall. Afterward, the sea goddess' familiar voice rang out. You've finally arrived safely in my divine hall. Jian Chen, I'll send you to the control center of the divine hall and give you partial control. Take the divine hall and leave the Sea of Despair with Yadrium, the sea goddess said with excitement that she struggled to hide. There was not long before she would be able to bask in the sun once again. An invisible force gathered and surrounded Jian Chen. The force was gentle, but it was also powerful to the point that Jian Chen could not resist. With a flash of blue light, Jian Chen was sent away by the force. He entered the control center and began to refine the divine hall. Yadrium, you are injured. Jian Chen needs a few days to refine the divine hall, so use this time to heal, the sea goddess said to Yadrium. Her figure had not appeared, so her voice originated from the surroundings. Yes, Your Majesty, Yedrium replied politely before sitting down on the spot. She began to work on recovering. In the Sea of Despair, she and Jianchen had suffered injuries on different levels. Jianchen possessed the toughness and recovery rate of the chaotic body, so he was able to recover without requiring much time after becoming injured. Yedrium was not in possession of such a powerful body. Although she had ingested quite a lot of medicine, there were still signs of injuries hidden within her body. In the blink of an eye, a few days passed. Yedrium made a full recovery within those days and returned to her peak condition while Jianchen had successfully refined the Divine Hall. He had left the control center and had appeared before Yedrium. Jianchen only gained partial control over the Divine Hall. The true master of the Divine Hall was still the Sea Goddess, but after he had gained partial control, he had obtained an even clearer understanding of the power of the Divine Hall. He was as insignificant as an ant before the Divine Hall. The power hidden within was enough to easily wipe out Saint Emperors. Afterward, Jianchen and Yedrium worked together to pilot the Divine Hall. They hurried off in another direction, guided by the abyssal crystal. The journey back was far less complicated than when they made their way to the Divine Hall. Not only did Jianchen and Yedrium manage to avoid many of the dangers in the Sea of Despair, they were even able to resist the distortions of space with the Divine Hall. They had no need to worry about being transported to an unknown location due to the distortions, throwing them off course. Their primary reason for entering the Sea of Despair this time was to bring out the soul of the Sea Goddess and prepare for her resurrection. Without the abyssal crystal, even the Sea Goddess would find it very difficult to make it out of the Sea of Despair. After all, she was no longer in possession of her peak strength. She was just a soul now, unable to use many of her abilities or secret techniques. The Divine Hall did not fly very quickly, but since it could repel the distortions of space, they managed to avoid a lot of detours. It only took around a dozen days before they made it out of the Sea of Despair, returning to the Sea Realm. It was several folds shorter than the amount of time it had taken them to reach the Divine Hall. Your Majesty, what should we do next? Jianchen asked. Now that the entirety of the Sea Goddess soul had left the Sea of Despair, they could resurrect her. My resurrection requires the activation of the 99 spirit springs in the Sea Realm. The chi from the springs will nourish the vitality of my body, allowing my soul to fuse perfectly with it. There must be no disruptions during the process, or everything we've done will be useless, said the Sea Goddess. Your Majesty, the Hall Masters of the Serpent God Hall and Heaven's Spirit Hall have lusted over your legacy for a very long time. When Your Majesty undergoes resurrection, the two Hall Masters are likely to come to disrupt the process. They are experts who have been emperors for a very long time. We obviously do not fear them in an open fight, but I fear that they will disrupt the process without considering the consequences. That will be very difficult for us to stop, Jianchen said with some worry. I've already made many preparations for Her Majesty's resurrection. Coupled with Her Majesty's weapon and Divine Hall, stopping them will not be difficult, said Yedrium. Yedrium, can I ask how confident you are at stopping the two Hall Masters? They possess powerful secret techniques after all, Jianchen asked. Yedrium thought about it silently before responding. I am around 80% confident that I can and 90% if I have Her Majesty's Divine Hall. It's just a pity that the resurrection cannot be held in the Divine Hall, or there would be no problem even if there were several more opponents. Jianchen fell silent and sank into his thoughts. Jianchen, do you have any good ideas to successfully resurrect me? The Sea Goddess asked hopefully. They had reached a crucial stage for her resurrection. She did not wish for everything to fail here and waste everything they had already accomplished. Your Majesty, if you can give me half a year to forge my swords, I am confident I can stop the two Hall Masters or even kill them. Then, Your Majesty's resurrection will be successful, Jianchen said, full of confidence. Chapter 1347, Sword Forging, 2, Forge Swords. What swords do you want to forge? How are they so powerful that they can kill two emperors? Are you going to be training some powerful secret technique instead? Yedrium glanced over and asked out of curiosity. She had gained a complete understanding of Jian Chen's strength during their time together in the Sea of Despair. She assumed that he possessed some powerful treasure, but his battle prowess was only at the level of a standard Saint Emperor. He would find it difficult to put up a fight against experts who had become Saint Emperors a very long time ago. This was because the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall possessed powerful secret techniques, more than just one of them. After observing Jian Chen, she understood that the power he used was very great, but he had never used a secret technique. Jian Chen shook his head and said, "I'm not going to train some powerful secret technique. I will be forging weapons that suit me." Yadrium became even more curious. She looked at Jian Chen in surprise, as if she no longer knew him. It was a common fact that all the humans of the Tian Yuan continent practiced Saint Force and would condense their own Saint weapons from it. She had never seen anyone become an exception to that fact in all these years, let alone hear that an expert needed to forge their weapons. Even the ruler armaments of Saint Rulers, king armaments of Saint Kings, and emperor armaments of Saint Emperors were all condensed from Saint Force by their previous owners. They were a materialization of energy, which made them even tougher than steel. "Jian Chen, we'll wait half a year since you're so confident. Reconstructing my body is very urgent, but so many years have passed already." "Just another half a year is nothing," the sea goddess agreed to Jian Chen's suggestion. Clearly, she did not wish to see anything happen to the resurrection process and ruin everything they had done so far. Jian Chen shrank the divine hall to the size of a fist and gave it to Yadrium so that she could bring it back to the sea goddess hall. Afterward, he returned to the turtle clan by himself. He spoke to the elders before immediately entering seclusion. At the same time, Tai Tai entered seclusion as well. Jian Chen had given him a 5th-grade violet cloud peach and a few immortal tier heavenly resources. He planned on using the heavenly resources to properly increase his strength. After all, he was the same as Jian Chen. He possessed battle prowess on the level of Saint Emperors, but his cultivation still dwelled on the level of Saint Kings. The Turtle Clan was as prominent as the midday sun in the sea realm now. Guests visited them from everywhere, and they were all extremely polite. Even the people from some of the most powerful clans dared not to act snobbishly when they paid a visit to the Turtle Clan, so Jian Chen and Tai Ta did not need to worry about the safety of the clan. They entered seclusion at ease and cut off all contact from the outside world. They would not emerge until they had accomplished what they were aiming for. Deep underground in a gloomy room, a fist-sized golden tower hovered in the air with a hazy glow. Jian Chen sat within a majestic hall within the artifact space as he communicated with the sword spirits. "Master, there are 2 main steps to forging the swords. These 2 steps possess the utmost importance to forging anything. The first step is to melt the materials by using your own settling flames. However, the grade of the materials is closely tied to the strength of the flames. If the materials are too high of a grade and the flames are too weak, it's impossible to melt the materials, thus, making it impossible to continue forging them. The second step determines whether the forging of a sword is successful or not. They need to be inscribed with sword inscriptions. The quality of an immortal sword is not only related to the materials it's forged from but also the power of the inscriptions. The more powerful the sword is, the more powerful its inscriptions are." Jian Chen immediately found the matter to be troublesome after hearing that. He knew that it would be difficult to forge the azulate swords, but he had never imagined it would be so complicated. He knew nothing about settling flames or sword inscriptions. His agreement of half a year with the sea goddess had been based off of what the sword spirits had told him to say. It seemed like he had a lot to learn if he wanted to forge the azulate swords. Half a year might not be enough time. "Master, you don't need to worry so much. Since we said that you only need half a year to forge the swords, you will definitely be able to do it in that time frame. The settling flames are divided into 3 major levels, which are the settling triflames, settling hexaflames, and settling nova flames. The triflames are the weakest and can only melt materials that are no higher than the immortal tier. However, these settling flames are produced by circulating and burning the energy in the body with the use of a secret technique. We will be passing this secret technique to Master. With Master's talent, you should be able to grasp it very quickly, and with Master's chaotic force, the flames produced will definitely be chaotic flames. Even though they're not true chaotic flames, they're much more powerful than settling flames of the same level. They will be able to melt immortal tier materials. Jian Chen gained somewhat of an understanding of forging the swords with that explanation. Creating the chaotic flames was akin to burning the chaotic force within him, which would be consumed very quickly. Jian Chen had only just reached the 4th layer, so his chaotic Niden was still the size of a soybean. He did not have a lot of chaotic force, not enough to gain a grasp over chaotic flames. Jian Chen grabbed a 5th grade violet cloud peach from his space ring and consumed it without any hesitation. It turned into vast energy that expanded throughout Jian Chen's body. The amount of energy was extremely shocking, but it was pure and gentle, making absorption very easy, and it would not cause any problems for his body, such as exploding from too much energy. Jian Chen began to circulate his energy along a certain path as he began to refine the vast amounts of energy within the peach. A 5th grade violet cloud peach could increase his cultivation by 2,500 years. This period of time was calculated according to the time of higher worlds, so on the Tianyuan continent, it was enough to replace 10,000 years of cultivation by a person or even more than that. Of course, talent played a factor in regards to the time period as well. Every single person possessed a different amount of talent, which was why they would spend different amounts of time at similar cultivation levels. If the peach was consumed by a genius, it would probably only be equivalent to 1,000 years of cultivation or just a few centuries. The vast energy had already formed a swirl in Jian Chen's dantian. He was currently refining and absorbing the energy as quickly as he could. His soybean-sized chaotic Niden seemed to have become a bottomless lake. As the vast amounts of energy poured in, nothing evident seemed to happen. It was growing at an extremely gradual rate. 7 days later, the energy from the peach completely disappeared, having all been absorbed by Jian Chen with nothing left. The 5th grade peach had increased his chaotic Niden by an inch in diameter. It was just slightly smaller than a dove's egg now. Jian Chen observed his chaotic Niden and could not help but feel rather disappointed. The effects of the peach were not as significant as he had imagined. The amount of energy he needed for cultivation had increased by several fold yet again after reaching the 4th layer of the chaotic body. Chapter 1348, Sword Forging, 3. However, Jian Chen did not stop. He knew that he would be burning his chaotic force by using the chaotic flames, so he would end up using a tremendous amount of chaotic force. Even after his chaotic Niden had increased by an inch in width, it could still lead to failure during the sword forging if he ran out in the final crucial moments. Violet cloud peaches could only be consumed once in 100 years, or they would lose their effects. He needed to wait a century before he could consume another one. As a result, Jian Chen pulled out a few dozen Class 9 Xianhuang Beast Energy Crystals and a large pile of heavenly resources that could increase a person's strength. He had obtained all these heavenly resources from the Xianhuang microcosm. Thus, even the lowest grade was at the immortal tier. At the same time, these heavenly resources were even more valuable than regular ones since they originated from a Xianhuang microcosm. Their effects were far more powerful than the heavenly resources from the outside world. However, Jian Chen immediately put the energy crystals away after absorbing a single Class 9 crystal. When he was still at the 3rd layer, a single energy crystal could still be refined into quite a few strands of chaotic force. Now, the amount of energy one provided was basically insignificant. Jian Chen looked at the pile of heavenly resources beside him. His hopes of quickly increasing his chaotic force all lay with them. Jian Chen began to stuff himself with the heavenly resources. He knew that their effects would be even greater if they were refined into pills, but even when considering the fact that he did not know how to refine pills, there was probably no one in the world with the ability to refine these heavenly resources. Once Jian Chen wolfed down some heavenly resources, his face became flushed and he could not help but tremble slightly. The energy hidden within the heavenly resources was tough and domineering. He felt like he had consumed gunpowder when they reached his stomach, where they exploded with violent energy that wreaked havoc on his body. If he had been weaker, he probably would have been blasted to pieces. If it were not for the fact that Jian Chen's chaotic body had reached the fourth layer and that the toughness of his body had increased drastically, he probably would have been quite heavily injured from just a single heavenly resources. The energy within the heavenly resources was nowhere near as vast as the violet cloud peach, and absorbing it was far more difficult. It would have been impossible for him to consume heavenly resources if he hadn't established a certain foundation of strength beforehand. Jian Chen consumed the heavenly resources one by one, but after understanding how volatile the energy in them was, he gave up on the heavenly resources that were of the third grade or higher. He only consumed first and second grade heavenly resources. He chose to do this to prevent himself from being heavily injured before he could power up. Gradually, the pile of heavenly resources near Jian Chen became smaller and smaller before completely disappearing altogether a few days later. However, the effects of consuming so many heavenly resources was only equivalent to the 5th grade violent cloud peach, which only made Jian Chen's chaotic Niden slightly larger than a dove's egg. What Jian Chen collected the most in the Xianhuang microcosm was not the energy crystals of Xianhuang beasts but immortal tier heavenly resources. Jian Chen pulled out another large pile of first and second grade heavenly resources and continued increasing his strength. Jian Chen originally planned to leave some of the heavenly resources for the people around him, but after understanding their volatility, he decisively dismissed that thought. The heavenly resources were unlike the more valuable varieties, such as the violet cloud peaches or flame cloud fruit. They were unsuitable for people beneath Saint Emperor to ingest without being refined into pills, and even a few Saint Emperors would become heavily injured from the violent energy in them after consuming them. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had been in seclusion for a month. He had consumed over 100 heavenly resources and refined them into a large quantity of chaotic force, allowing his chaotic Niden to rapidly expand. Jian Chen emerged from seclusion full of confidence. He had discovered that his body had developed some immunity to the effects of the heavenly resources after consuming so many in such a short amount of time. They were becoming less effective at increasing the amount of chaotic force he could absorb. It was an after effect, but this after effect would slowly vanish with the passage of time. Jian Chen secretly checked on the situation of the Turtle Clan before silently leaving. He still had 5 months before the agreed time with the sea goddess. During that time, he needed to forge the azulate swords. I already have enough chaotic force to forge the azulate swords. I should look for somewhere suitable now. Jian Chen shot into the air like a rocket and passed through the protective barrier of the sea realm extremely quickly. He appeared above the vast ocean before flying in the direction of the Tian Yuan continent. Soon afterward, Jian Chen returned to the Tian Yuan continent. He kept his eye out for a region of concentrated volcanic activity along the way, since that region would be suitable for forging his swords. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed when he flew past a mountain range. There was actually an ancient clan there with a saint king present. He was at the peak of the 8th heavenly layer. Such powerful strength was extremely rare on the Tian Yuan continent. Jian Chen stopped and slowly descended. An invisible pressure radiated from him, surrounding the ancient hall where the Saint King was in seclusion. The other saint rulers had failed to sense the pressure. In the next moment, the door to the hall opened and a white-robed, sagely old man hurried out. He stared at Jian Chen in shock while Jian Chen hovered in the sky. Although Jian Chen seemed very young, the old man refused to believe that was his true age, since he could feel a tremendous pressure from him, almost to the point where he found it to be suffocating. Saint Emperor. The old man felt shocked, before immediately clasping his hands at Jian Chen. He asked politely, "I am Kong Tian and I greet Senior. I have failed to welcome you from afar when Senior has come to visit my Kong family. Please forgive me. Kong Tian, this emperor wants to know where the largest and hottest region of volcanoes on the Tian Yuan continent is located," Jian Chen asked nonchalantly. He knew that Kong Tian had treated him as a saint emperor, so he obviously needed to act like one. Chapter 1349, sword forging. 4. Kong Tian became stunned by Jian Chen's questions. He wondered to himself if the Saint Emperor had really just come to his Kong family to ask such a question. Despite his intense curiosity, Kong Tian dared not to behave rashly before a Saint Emperor. He thought about the question seriously before replying with clasped hands. Senior, from what I can recall, the hottest place on the Tianyuan continent would be the far western side of the continent. There is a large expanse of volcanoes near the West Sea, filling a circle with a radius of 200,000 kilometers. It's unendurably hot there, and there are eruptions all year round. Ordinary people are unable to approach the region at all. The West, Jian Chen mumbled and took note of the region. Afterward, he asked some more questions. Kong Tian, this emperor has been in secluded cultivation for many years and has only recently emerged. I want to know if there has been any major things that have occurred on the continent. Senior, there has indeed been a lot of shocking matters that have recently occurred. First, the former sect master of the Bloodsword sect, Houston, became a Saint Emperor, and then the great elder of Mercenary City, Tianjian, became one as well. However, these two matters were nothing compared to another matter. In the depths of Mercenary City, Kong Tian informed Jian Chen of everything he knew. He told him about everything that had happened without bending any truths or hiding any details. He placed particular focus on the seal beneath Mercenary City when he explained everything. Jian Chen became stern. He had spent most of his time in the Sea Realm recently, so he had no idea what had happened on the Tianyuan continent. He had never thought that the seal of the world of Forsaken Saints would have broken so soon and that they had already sent scouts to the Tianyuan continent. The world of Forsaken Saints is extremely powerful. According to what I learned in Mercenary City, they have even more Saint Emperors than the Saint Kings of the Tianyuan continent, Kong Tian heavily added. His complexion was horrible. The world of Forsaken Saints possessed a terrifying amount of power. Many Saint Kings even thought they were seeing the premonition of an apocalypse. Since all the Saint Kings of the Tianyuan continent have gathered in Mercenary City, why are you still hiding here? Jian Chen asked nonchalantly. Kong Tian's face changed. He was afraid of being punished by the Saint Emperor because of this. After all, he was not the opponent of a Saint Emperor, so he hurriedly explained in fear, Senior, it's not that I'm unwilling to use everything I have to protect the Tianyuan continent at Mercenary City, but I've already reached the peak of the 8th heavenly layer. As a result, I wanted to use this period of time to go into seclusion and reach the 9th heavenly layer before the world of Forsaken Saints invades. That way, I'll be of even more use during battle. Jian Chen nodded slightly. With a wave of his hand, he tossed a Class H Xianhuang Beast Energy Crystal at Kong Tian and said, That's the monster core of a foreign beast. Use it to cultivate. I hope you can reach the 9th heavenly layer soon and protect the Tianyuan continent. I thank Senior for Senior's gift. Kong Tian caught the energy crystal and responded emotionally. Even though he was a Saint King, Class 8 monster cores were extremely important to him. After all, Class 7 monster cores were items that could only be encountered by chance. Class 8 monster cores were even more valuable, and even Saint Kings would struggle to obtain them. With a single movement, Jian Chen instantly disappeared, leaving behind an afterimage. He was lightning fast, and he looked like he had just teleported away. Jian Chen hurried off with the illusory flash. He moved faster and faster before he turned into a faint afterimage in the end. He hurried to the west to an area described by Kong Tian. He did not use a space gate, but since his understanding of the illusory flash had rapidly increased, he could move even faster than Saint Emperors. A day later, Jian Chen appeared several million kilometers away. During his journey, he had passed by Mercenary City. He had used his soul to sweep through the entire area from 100,000 kilometers away to check on its situation. However, he did not stop while continuing south. This was because he knew that he would not be able to provide much support before he had forged the Azulate swords, even though his strength was on par with Saint Emperors now. He would only be an extremely ordinary Saint Emperor when the army of Saint Emperors from the world of Forsaken Saints attacked. I need to resurrect the Sea Goddess as soon as possible. Even if the Saint Emperors on the Tianyuan continent increase by tenfold, we still won't be the world of Forsaken Saint's opponent. Only Origin Realm experts can change the situation, Jian Chen thought. The West possessed the largest volcanic ranges on the Tianyuan continent. They filled a radius of 200,000 kilometers and were close to the West Sea. It was unendurably hot all year round, and rarely did anyone set foot there because several hundred volcanoes would erupt every day. Even Heaven Saint Masters were unlikely to make it out alive if they entered this region. There was no land in the region either. The surface was an endless expanse of lava with violent storms occurring from time to time, flinging lava into the air. The lava in the air would turn the entire sky red and was even more violent than the storms at sea. This region of volcanoes was a forbidden zone on the Tianyuan continent, except it was not as renowned at the Death Nest since even Saint Kings and Saint Emperors had fallen in the Death Nest before. Only Heaven Saint Masters were threatened in this volcano region, while those who had reached Saint Ruler would be able to protect themselves. At the same time, this was heaven for those who practiced fire-attributed saint force. However, the strength required to cultivate in this region was extremely great, not something that any ordinary person possessed. Jian Chen approached the region with lightning-like speed. As soon as he arrived, he was hit by a wave of heat. He immediately felt like he had plunged into a sea of fire. His clothes caught on fire and were reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen used chaotic force to protect himself while he pulled out a new set of clothes from his space ring. He then flew to the depths of the region. There were even larger volcanoes and even hotter magma in the depths, which would be helpful for forging his swords. Jian Chen discovered around a dozen saint rulers in individual caves along the way. The strongest out of all of them was a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler. There was not a single saint king to be seen. Jian Chen arrived in the center of the volcanic region very quickly. An extremely large volcano stood before him, and its crater was over 1,000 meters wide. The magma inside surged, producing huge waves from time to time. The fire-attributed energy there was extremely unstable. Jian Chen could tell with a single glance that the volcano was about to erupt. While still in the air, he pondered whether to use it or not for a while. He then plunged into the magma like a loose arrow. The magma was terrifyingly hot. Without any doubt, Jian Chen believed that even steel that had been refined hundreds of times would be reduced to a puddle of liquid in the shortest amount of time possible in there. Jian Chen used his chaotic force to protect himself and pushed away all the magma around him so that it could not make any contact with him at all. He immediately headed for the depths. Jian Chen sank for several thousand meters before finally hitting solid ground. The surface was soft like soil, but it was several times hotter than the magma itself. Jian Chen sat down and focused his attention. He began to practice the secret technique he had learned from the sword spirits, attempting to make his chaotic force burn to produce chaotic flames. The secret technique was not profound. In the immortals' world where the sword spirits came from, everyone knew it. In just 3 days, Jian Chen had gained a basic grasp over it. A gray flame happily flickered in his palm like a spirit. The flame seemed gray on the surface, but with a closer inspection, it seemed to possess all the colors in the world. It was extremely odd. As soon as the chaotic flames appeared, the surrounding temperature skyrocketed. The scarlet magma rapidly became a white color. Suddenly, the magma began to churn. The appearance of the chaotic flames had caused the volcano to erupt prematurely. A pillar of flames shot into the sky from the crater, but the eruption this time was different. The flames it erupted with were not scarlet but reddish-white. Chapter 1350, Sword Forging, 5. The wild lava formed a scarlet wave that gushed into the sky before scattering like resplendent fireworks. It rained down everywhere, causing the entire sky to become scarlet red. At the same time, the surrounding temperature climbed at an unbelievable rate. The sea of lava in the surroundings vigorously bubbled like boiling water. The chaotic flames created from the chaotic force were far more powerful than Jian Chen had expected. Not only had the volcano erupted prematurely because of them, but all the volcanoes in the surroundings were affected as well. Every single volcano seemed to be an independent existence, but they were all connected beneath the earth. Jianchen's chaotic flames, which were at the center of all the volcanoes, had basically influenced all of them. Terrifying waves of heat rapidly rolled out, quickly expanding across the entire region. At the same time, the saint rulers who had been cultivating in their caves stopped what they were doing and immediately emerged. They stared at the depths of the lava in shock. What's happening? Why has the temperature here become so terrifying where even I find it hard to endure? Has something happened to the volcanoes? Odd. Why is the temperature of the volcanoes climbing? Even I find it rather difficult to withstand. This has never happened before. Is something happening to these volcanoes? The saint rulers all stared at the depths as surprise and suspicion filled their faces. They had already cultivated in this region for many years, so they possessed an extremely detailed understanding of this place. What had happened today was unprecedented. They hesitated above the sea of lava for a while. A few of them had retreated toward the outskirts because the temperature was still climbing. If the temperature continued to rise, a moment would come where they would find it unbearable even as fire-attributed saint rulers. In the end, only 3 people remained. They were the strongest of all the saint rulers present, having already reached the 9th heavenly layer and were not too far off from Saint Kings. Something's definitely happened inside the volcanoes to cause these sudden changes. It might even be a fortuitous encounter. Sirs, would you like to work together and see just what is happening inside? A 9th heavenly layer saint ruler asked the other 2 people. In the end, the 3 of them agreed to move together and headed further into the depths simultaneously. However, when they were 1,000 kilometers from where Jianchen was forging his swords, they both needed to stop. They all became flushed and their bodies seemed to be burning. The heat there had completely exceeded anything they had been expecting. They had possessed the strength to travel through the volcanoes before, but they had reached their limits now. They even began to suspect that they would be reduced to ashes if they took another step forward. Boom! Suddenly, with a powerful sound, the entire sea of lava churned. Huge waves tossed and turned as white-hot lava erupted from the largest volcano 1,000 kilometers away, shooting through the sky. The eruption was so violent that it caused the surrounding space to gently tremble, and the heat was so shocking that it seemed to burn the air. The 3 saint rulers stared in a daze at the unique, white-hot lava from 1,000 kilometers away. With their sharp senses, they noticed that the violent fire-attributed energy in the surroundings calmed down with the eruption of the white-hot lava, behaving like a docile little lamb. The lava shot into the sky and blossomed like a flower. It fell like a fan, enveloping a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Oh no, retreat! The 3 saint rulers revealed different expressions, because they just happened to be within the area that was going to be enveloped by the lava. In the end, they managed to avoid the white-hot lava by a hair's breadth after fleeing with everything they had. When a stream of lava fell 50 meters away from them, the terrifying heat reduced their clothes to ashes instantaneously. Even their bodies became pitch black, having been injured by the heat. So scary. The 3 saint rulers all shivered from fright. They had suffered such injuries even though they were 50 kilometers from a stream of lava. The outcome would have been unthinkable if they had been hit by a stream. Something must have happened to these volcanoes. We cannot stay here for long. Let's leave as soon as possible and report this matter to Mercenary City. I am worried that this is connected to the world of forsaken saints. A saint ruler immediately reached a conclusion before leaving in a state of shock. He hurried to Mercenary City. Jianshen sat at ease in the depths of the magma. All of the magma surrounding him had become white-hot. The temperature of the magma had increased several-fold. He used chaotic force to protect himself, so he did not fear the heat. He held a material for the azulate swords in his hands. He lacked weapon forging experience, but the sword spirits would primarily be in charge of forging the swords this time. He was only there for support, so he did not need to possess much skill at forging weapons. What he did was very simple, which was listen to the sword spirit's commands. He melted the materials in a particular order before letting the sword spirits handle everything else. Master, you must closely observe the forging process this time. You will be able to gain quite a lot of valuable experience. Since the azulate swords that we are forging this time are only immortal artifacts, just Ziying and I will be enough. However, if you want to forge god artifacts, the completion of such an item will completely depend on Master, Ziying warned. He and Qing Suo had already materialized, floating above Jian Chen's head as two illusionary figures. They stared at Jian Chen as he melted the materials with great attention. Jian Chen nodded. He understood that the azulate swords formed this time would only be temporary substitutes. He would not use them permanently. Once his strength had reached a corresponding level, the swords would fall into disuse. He would end up forging a second set of swords in the future. Heaven's soul stone, stardust, and all the other materials Jian Chen had gathered over many years, with great effort, were melted into a liquid by his chaotic flames. Jian Chen continued to power the chaotic flames so that they could purify the liquid so that only the essence of the materials remained. Jian Chen spent a total of 7 days on this step. The liquid had been reduced to 2/3 of its original size, but only the purest essence remained. Condense. Ziying and Qing Suo exclaimed together. With that, Jian Chen immediately maneuvered the liquid in the air, having it undergo condensation by following a set of orderly steps. In the end, he condensed the blades of 2 palm-sized swords. He then used Draconix wood to form the hilt, slowly forming the swords. At the same time, Ziying and Qing Suo began to move as well. They each tended to one of the swords as they constantly changed hand seals, engraving inscription after inscription. Jian Chen poured his chaotic force into the blades endlessly as well, refining and forging the swords even more. Chapter 1351, Shocking Sword Qi. The second stage of forging and refining the swords was the most important process. Not only would this stage impact the success and failure of the forging process, but it would also control the quality of the swords. The sword's power would completely depend on this step and determine whether or not he could successfully forge them. Jian Chen and the sword spirits got to work when they arrived at this step. The sword spirits took the lead by rapidly inscribing inscriptions on the swords. When the inscriptions covering the immortal swords were about to be completed, the dull blades began to shine with a weak glow and a sharp presence. The glow rapidly strengthened as more inscriptions were added. The second step was an extremely lengthy process. Jian Chen used his left hand to pour in chaotic force so that he could forge the swords and so that the chaotic force would be able to perfectly fuse with the swords. His right hand burned with chaotic flames, nurturing the swords as they went through the inscription process so that the inscriptions could fuse perfectly with the swords. Chaotic flames consumed chaotic force extremely rapidly. Jian Chen's chaotic Niden had clearly shrunk after several days of constant use. Above the ruins of Mercenary City were several dozen divine halls that seemed to surround the city. There was a large, empty region directly above the seal in Mercenary City. No one stayed there so that they could avoid being struck by the streams of energy created by the spatial tunnel. The 4 races all took up one side, making them divided. The humans had the most people. Virtually all the Saint Kings of the continent had gathered. After them were the experts of the Wasteland continent, who had sent 3/4 of their entire force with forbidden artifacts. There were fewer magical beasts than the 100 races, but all 3 Saint Emperors had gathered together. They all remained within their own divine halls, giving off presences that were obviously meant to deter the other parties but caused the atmosphere to feel heavy. The sea race possessed the fewest people, only a few dozen. However, no one dared to underestimate them. Several Emperor armaments had been stabbed into the ground below and gave off terrifying pulses of energy, causing the surrounding space to shake. They were extremely powerful. The experts of Mercenary City had all gathered within one of the divine halls in the human region. The person who led them was the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. The Grand Elder sat on the highest point in the room. His face had darkened and he was extremely stern. There was also some worry present on his face. He mumbled, "The Great Elder still has not refined the Supreme Divine Hall. I wonder when he will succeed. If we have the Divine Hall, our confidence will be greater when dealing with the invasion of the world of Forsaken Saints. I just hope that they don't attack too soon, or we might not be able to repel them with our strength here." Changyang Qingyun's taken away the ancestral weapon of his clan. Back then, Changyang Zhu Shao and Changyang Qingyun left together. Changyang Zhu Shao has already returned while Changyang Qingyun and the other great leaders are nowhere to be seen. I wonder where they've gone with the ancestral weapon. Have they changed their minds now? The sixth elder of Mercenary City asked. The Grand Elder fell silent before standing up. "I'll go see Changyang Zhu Shao right now and ask him about the situation. The ancestral weapons of the 10 protector clans are crucial for repelling the invasion. If Great Elder Tianjian uses them to cast the supreme killing formation left behind by the city lord, we'll be able to temporarily stop the world of Forsaken Saints even if they send an army of Saint Emperors." The Grand Elder left the Divine Hall of Mercenary City and went to Changyang Zhu Zhao's Divine Hall to inquire about the situation. He wanted to borrow the Emperor armament of the Changyang clan. "Something has happened to our Changyang clan. Our founding ancestor, Yang Lai, has returned. The ancestor has taken away the Emperor armament and the great elders of the Yuan and Qing branches were heavily injured. They are currently in seclusion and healing, so they are unable to come." Changyang Zhu Shao told the truth after hesitating for a while. Although the return of their founding ancestor was unbelievable, the Tyrant's Blade School had already mentioned a similar occurrence before. "What? The founding ancestor of your Changyang clan is still alive?" The Grand Elder of Mercenary City was astounded. After all, it had already been more than 1,000,000 years since the Changyang clan had been founded. The clan was even more ancient than Mercenary City. Changyang Zhu Shao gently sighed while his feelings became mixed. The return of their founding ancestor was supposed to be something to celebrate, but he was unable to lighten up no matter what since the founding ancestor's past identity was actually his own great-grandson. The hierarchy had been reduced to a mess. Because of this matter, Changyang Zhu Yunshao and Changyang Zhu Yayan remained silent and depressed. The Grand Elder fell silent for a while, finally accepting this shocking piece of news. Afterward, he asked, "Changyang Zhu Shao, do you know where the senior is?" "He's left with the founding ancestor of the Tyrant's Blade School, Gui Haidao. I don't know where he is, but he will recover his strength very soon. When the world of Forsaken Saints invades, the ancestor should appear," said Changyang Zhu Shao. "Fantastic, fantastic. This is just fantastic." The Grand Elder was overjoyed. The strength of the Tian Yuan continent would drastically increase that way. When the great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School had said that their ancestor had returned, I thought they were joking. Never would I have expected what they had said to be true. The Grand Elder sighed emotionally to himself. At this moment, a saint ruler of Mercenary City hurried into the Divine Hall. He said with clasped hands, "Grand Elder, there are 3 saint rulers who want to see you outside. They say that they have something important to report, where it might even be connected to the world of Forsaken Saints." The Grand Elder's face changed slightly with that. He clasped his hands at Changyang Zhu Shao before leaving in a hurry. The Grand Elder met the 3 saint rulers, who had come from the western volcano range, outside. The 3 saint rulers told the Grand Elder what they had seen as well as what they believed was happening, catching the Grand Elder's attention. Very soon, there were many experts of the 4 races who came after receiving the news. It was a sensitive period of time. Anything that could be connected to the world of Forsaken Saints was enough to pique their interest. Is it caused by that scorching divine phoenix's secluded cultivation? A Class 8 magical beast in human form asked. But we didn't sense the presence of any magical beasts at all, the 3 saint rulers politely replied. Every single breath they took was filled with hesitation before the saint kings. No matter what it is, we should go and have a look. If it really is that divine scorching phoenix, we can invite her to join us and protect this world. However, if it's another tunnel to the world of forsaken saints, we can prepare for the invaders beforehand, the Grand Elder said heavily. Afterward, the four races all sent some experts to the volcanoes to check on the situation. The volcanoes in the west were currently undergoing an overwhelming change. All the volcanoes in the region were erupting and flames and lava were thrown into the sky, turning it a scarlet color. The endless sea of lava below violently churned. From just a single breath, one would feel like they were breathing in a bundle of roaring flames. The temperature was just frightening. This definitely isn't caused by the phoenix. It's impossible for her to make all the volcanoes in the region undergo such shocking changes, and her presence isn't here either, said a magical beast. His face immediately became ugly. He had already sensed that the changes here were likely connected to the world of forsaken saints. Let's enter and immediately have a look around, the Grand Elder suggested. He used Saint Force and World Force to protect himself before charging into the depths. When they had advanced 10,000 kilometers, a terrifying sword chi suddenly appeared, causing all of them to shiver. The sword chi was just far too powerful. It possessed a seemingly destructive presence, ripping through space before boldly spreading in all directions. Look! What is that? Suddenly, a Saint King called out as he pointed ahead. Everyone looked over. Before them were two pillars of light, one violet and one azure, plunging into the sky. They obliterated the thick layer of red clouds in the sky. It was a shocking display. What is that? Is this the birth of some treasure? I can sense that the unbelievably powerful sword chi originates from that place. Odd. Why do the two pillars of light look like two swords? The Saint Kings became fixated on the two pillars of light as they began to discuss the changes. Surprise filled their faces. The two pillars of light look extremely similar to two supremely powerful swords. Why was this happening in this cluster of volcanoes? Was some treasure of the world coming into existence? A few Saint Kings could no longer resist the temptation when they heard about the treasures of the world. They broke away from the main group and flew forward as their eyes burned with desire. Some other people were unwilling to fall behind now that some people had broken away from the group. Like a snowball, more and more people left, flying toward the two pillars of light in a hurry. Only an extremely low number of people maintained their composure. Chapter 1352, Fight for Treasure. The surrounding volcanoes rapidly erupted, spewing out a lot of white flames, which gave off a terrifying heat. The humans, magical beasts, 100 races, and sea race all hurriedly flew toward the treasure. All of them wanted to take it for themselves and, thus, drastically increase their own strength. Along the way, they constantly dodged the lava that rained down. Although the lava was extremely densely packed, almost forming a blanket, all of them were Saint Kings. Their understanding of the mysteries of space were incomparable to Saint Rulers, so they could easily avoid the lava. Clearly, they knew that the terrifyingly hot, white lava was very powerful. Even Saint Kings at 9th heavenly layer would not want to get any of it on themselves. Even when they were faced with the situation where they could no longer dodge, they would disperse it with an attack. They did not want to come in contact with the lava. The treasure is mine. Don't fight with me over it. I only want the treasure. I am not afraid to take on Saint Emperors for it. I might even be able to become a Saint Emperor with this treasure, a 9th heavenly layer human Saint King thought to himself. His eyes were filled with greed and eagerness. He used wind-attributed Saint Force, and coupled with his high-level understanding of the mysteries of space, he moved ahead of everyone else. At this moment, a silver-white spear shot over from afar, traveling toward the back of the leading Saint King. The person who had attacked was an 8th heavenly layer human Saint King. He wanted to stop the person in front of him and take the lead. The 9th heavenly layer Saint King became furious. Saint Force surged out of his body and enveloped him. An azure sword immediately appeared in his hand as he turned and knocked away the spear. Boom! The collision of the two weapons erupted with a loud sound. Battles between Saint Kings were destructive. Just the pulse of energy from the clash tossed boiling lava into the sky when it struck the sea below. White-hot lava surged into the sky like fire dragons, giving off extremely terrifying heat. Some of the Saint Kings who were unable to dodge the lava attacked it. Powerful strands of energy shot through the sky, colliding with the lava and erupting with heavy sounds. All of them had used ruthless methods to clear the obstructions before them. The wave-like lava was immediately dispersed by the Saint Kings, causing it to erupt in all directions like meteorites. The drops were densely packed like rain, which made dodging them even more difficult. Very soon, several Saint Kings were struck by the lava. The power of the white-hot lava exceeded anything that anyone could have imagined. The protective barrier formed from Saint Force around the Saint Kings was filled with holes because of the rain-like lava, which then burned through their bodies with white flames. The drops of lava left behind finger-sized holes that rapidly expanded to the size of a fist. The Saint Kings paled and produced heavy grunts. They stopped their advance and rapidly retreated. A violent poison from the fire was deposited within them after the lava passed through their bodies. If they did not cleanse it, it would cause even greater damage. What powerful lava! Many people witnessed the suffering Saint Kings and immediately became shocked. The white-hot lava was more terrifying than any of them had imagined. However, this was nowhere near enough to stop them from attempting to obtain the treasure. As they came closer and closer to the two pillars of light, more and more people engaged in battles. They all wanted to charge over first and take the treasure for themselves, before anyone else. Whenever someone took the lead, that person would have to withstand the combined attacks of multiple Saint Kings. The number of injured people increased as well. A sixth heavenly layer Class 8 magical beast had even fallen into the sea of lava below. When he emerged again, he was covered with roaring flames. Even with his body as a Class 8 magical beast, he was burned until he only had half his life left. His body suffered extremely severe injuries, where most of it had dried up from the heat. Suddenly, a terrifying ripple of energy appeared in front of them. A Saint King at great perfection, who was only a meter tall, had pulled out a shield. The shield expanded as he moved, reaching a width of 30 meters. After placing it behind him, he shot off like a rocket, surpassing everyone in a single moment. He took a wide lead. Immediately, the Saint Kings behind all attacked the dwarven Saint King, but all their attacks were blocked by the huge shield. More than 20 Saint Kings struck out in unison, but not only did they fail to smash through the shield, they did not even manage to make it shake. "It's the forbidden artifact of the dwarves, the Heaven's Guard," cried out a knowledgeable Saint King. "What? This is the Heaven's Guard?" It said that even Saint Emperors cannot smash through it. It was a work of pride created by a powerful ancestor of theirs, and it's been passed down since ancient times. I never would have thought that the dwarves would have brought this forbidden artifact. He has the Heaven's Guard, so it's impossible for us to stop him like this. Stop fighting and catch up, or the treasure's going to end up with the 100 races. This is our Tian Yuan continent. Since a treasure has appeared here, it belongs to us humans. You have no right to take it. Many Saint Kings yelled from behind. They were extremely furious. They all stopped fighting and tried to catch up as quickly as possible while dodging the lava. Very soon, everyone was only 100 kilometers from the two pillars. However, at this moment, the dwarven expert at the very front with the Heaven's Guard produced a weird cry, as if he had seen something terrifying. He came to a sudden halt before retreating extremely quickly. As he retreated, his clothes were reduced to shreds in the incoming wind before turning into dust. His bronze skin also became covered with densely packed gashes. Every single wound was extremely thin to the point that they were difficult to distinguish by eye. However, they were all bone deep. Blood gushed out, and in the blink of an eye, the dwarf was covered in blood. He bellowed out and placed the Heaven's Guard above him. The edges of the shield immediately fell, forming a shell around the dwarven expert. The shield isolated him from the outside world. Even though that was what had happened, the shield constantly rang out with sounds, as if it was being hit by a storm of rain. At the same time, all the Saint Kings rushed up from behind, but without any exceptions, all the people who entered a 100-kilometer radius was attacked by something unknown. Even with Saint force around them, they were unable to protect themselves. They suffered the same injuries as the dwarf. This is sword chi. My God, what powerful sword chi! And it's invisible. Everyone retreat, oh no. An extremely powerful sword intent has enveloped this place. The energy and air in the surroundings has been turned into invisible sword chi by the sword intent, making it exist everywhere. This sword chi is just too powerful. We cannot stand against it. Everyone retreat. A few experts who used swords understood what was going on and cried out in shock. Disbelief filled their faces. Chapter 1353, Birth of the Immortal Swords. Just what is this treasure? It's actually so powerful and terrifying that even we cannot get within 100 kilometers of it with our strength as Saint Kings. I think the treasure is probably an overwhelmingly powerful sword. Seeing how it can produce such terrifying sword chi without a person controlling it, it is no weaker than the ancestral weapons of the 10 protector clans. It might even surpass them in power. The birth of this treasure in such a crucial moment probably has something to do with the world of forsaken saints. It might be crucial to repelling the other world. Fantastic. I am skilled with the sword and have been enchanted by the sword for thousands of years. I may not be able to claim that I have reached absolute mastery, but there are few that can rival me in the world at the very least. The treasure is suitable for me. If I happen to obtain it, I will definitely do all I can to protect the continent, the ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire said sternly. He was also filled with a desire to possess the treasure. Even though he was covered in blood, he still possessed the bearing of a ruler, which he had accumulated over the years. All the people had retreated to over 100 kilometers away from the treasure and no one dared to get any closer than that. Even the dwarven expert with the Heaven's Guard did not travel any closer. Even though he would be fine under the protection of the shield, he wouldn't be able to take the treasure for himself when he was encased by the shield. Of course, that was not the reason why he did not want to venture any further. The true reason was that he had sensed a presence that made his heart beat heavily. The dwarf calmed down. He continued to carry the Heaven's Guard, which had shrunken back to a meter in diameter, 100 kilometers away as he stared at the two pillars of light while brimming with interest. He then gazed around the endless volcanoes and lava in the surroundings. After a moment of silent thought, he seemed to understand something and his face immediately changed. He called out with his rough voice, "I'm not going to take part in this anymore. The treasure is not something we can take." The dwarf immediately signaled the other experts of the 100 races, communicating with them through a secret technique. Afterward, he left without any reluctance at all. The experts of the 100 races all revealed slightly different expressions. They stared deeply at the location of the light before all choosing to silently leave. All the people of the 100 races have retreated. Have they found out what it is? A human immediately voiced his doubts. What do they know? Everyone's witnessed the might of the treasure. It's probably even more powerful than the ancestral weapons of the 10 protector clans. Even Saint Kings cannot approach it. Probably only Saint Emperors have the power to compete for it. Does the 100 races have any Saint Emperors? They know they're weak, which is why they abandoned the fight. A magical beast immediately responded scornfully. He had no goodwill for the 100 races. The people of the 100 races did not retreat too far away. They stopped at the outskirts of the volcanoes to watch. Without long, several tremendous presences engulfed the entire place. The news there had already reached the ears of the Saint Emperors. The 3 Class 9 magical beasts and the Path Lord of Carnal Desires had all arrived. They were extremely powerful, having reached the apex of the world. With the entire world in perspective, there were only a few people as powerful as them. There was no one who could dominate them other than the barrier spirit that had already reached the origin realm. As soon as the 4 of them entered the volcanic region, they shot toward the pillars of light. They moved extremely fast, to the point where it seemed like they were teleporting. In the end, they safely arrived above the largest volcano. They stared at the two pillars of light that had erupted from the crater. Energy that was enough to shake the surroundings protected them, keeping the invisible sword chi away. Even with that, their barriers slightly trembled. The Path Lord looked at the bottom of the crater before glancing over the three other Saint Emperors with him. A sliver of undetectable coldness flashed through his eyes before he plunged into the lava. The three magical beasts did not hesitate either when they saw him move. They all jumped in as well. They had all witnessed the power of the treasure. Even as Saint Emperors, they were tempted by it. From afar, the Grand Elder of Mercenary City helplessly sighed. He mumbled, "It's a pity that the Great Elder is in seclusion refining the Divine Hall while the artifact spirit remains hidden away. Otherwise, there would be a chance that the treasure would belong to Mercenary City." Regret filled the faces of the Saint Kings when they saw the four Saint Emperors plunge into the lava. All of them were interested by such a powerful treasure, but they did not possess the strength of Saint Emperors. They were unable to get closer than 100 kilometers away. "I hope the treasure doesn't end up in the hands of foreigners," a few Saint Kings prayed inside. Even if someone else obtained the treasure, they hoped that that person would be a part of the Tian Yuan continent. At this moment, two beams of extremely bright lights erupted from the central volcano. At that moment, the scarlet-red volcano had become half violet and half azure because of the beams of light. Countless sword chi crisscrossed in the light. The sword chi were not invisible but had materialized. Every single one of them was only the length and width of a finger, but they were all extremely resplendent, giving off a bright, white light. At the same time, a terrifying energy erupted from within the volcano, causing the entire mountain to violently jolt. Many boulders shattered and even the entire mountain had shrunk to half its size. The four Saint Emperors all surged back into the sky as flames burned around them. They were like four fireballs as they hung in the sky. Very soon, the flames were put out, revealing the four of them. They were all in a rather horrible shape. They had not been injured, but they had been forced out of the lava. The Path Lord and three magical beasts were completely shocked. They all stared down sternly and quietly. A long while later, the Path Lord broke the silence. "That seems like sword chi, yet it's a little different." He spoke with a very heavy voice. The treasure was far more powerful than he had imagined. Probably even the emperor armaments of the protector clans could not rival it. This sword chi doesn't seem to be condensed from Saint Force or World Force. It's like sword chi, yet it's different at the same time. However, I have never seen such terrifyingly powerful sword chi, Lankiros said in a heavy voice. "The odd sword chi can harm me, but it's still not enough to bring life-threatening danger. We might as well charge in forcefully," Kaiser coldly said as his eyes shone brightly. The Path Lord shook his head and said, "Treasures of the world have appeared throughout history. According to the ancient records, the world gives birth to them and they are naturally nurtured. Once they have completely formed, they will erupt by themselves, unlike right now. I think this treasure is still being nurtured and still has not formed completely. If we take it forcefully, we might destroy it." "You're right. Let's wait for now. It might not be the time to collect the treasure right now. If we try to take it at the wrong time, the treasure might even end up destroyed by our hands," said Sangqiong. His white clothes fluttered in the wind. His face was ruddy and filled with spirit, giving off a righteous feeling. He carried the slight presence of divinity. Kaiser and Lankiros both agreed with their suggestions. They had read the ancient records on treasures of the world, so they possessed some understanding as well. They knew that the Path Lord was telling the truth. Afar, the Grand Elder of Mercenary City let out a breath in relief before personally returning to Mercenary City. He wanted to find the barrier spirit and request her to take the treasure of the world. He did not wish to give up on something so powerful. Unfortunately, the barrier spirit basically never appeared. If she did not appear herself, no one could find her. The Grand Elder was flustered after using all the various methods he could think of in attempt to get a hold of her. I understand now. The barrier spirit is tasked with protecting Mercenary City and guarding the seal to the world of Forsaken Saints. She never takes part in the battles on the Tianyuan continent. Treasures like these have appeared several times in the history of the Tianyuan continent and she's never appeared for them. It's probably exactly because of this that the barrier spirit does not care for the treasure this time. Sigh, I have become muddle-headed. The Grand Elder understood something. He no longer paid any attention to the treasure and devoted himself to guarding Mercenary City. He poured all his attention into keeping track of the other world's movements. In the blink of an eye, the Path Lord and the Saint Emperors had waited in the volcanic region for 2 months. In those 2 months, they did not take a single step away, waiting and guarding the place silently. They were afraid that the treasure would appear once they left and be taken by someone else. At this moment, the 4 Saint Emperors' eyes snapped open simultaneously. Boom! In the next moment, the largest volcano exploded. It was reduced to countless pieces of loose rock and lava, which shot out in all directions. 2 eye-catching swords flew out of the lava and into the sky. The 2 swords were 1.3 meters in length each. They erupted with violet and azure lights, 1 color for each sword. They also gave off a shocking sword chi that was extremely powerful. Wherever the swords passed, the space would shatter and be reduced to darkness. They seemed to become the only existences in the world. The world seemed to lose its color before the swords, where even the scorching sun lost its radiance. The entire world seemed to kneel before the swords. The wind and clouds in the surroundings churned and the red clouds that hung in the sky all year round actually began to vanish. Thick, dark clouds silently gathered instead, replacing the red clouds. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.